The elevator doors sealed shut with a hollow clunk, trapping two strangers between floors in a moment that would shatter everything they thought they knew about success and survival. He was Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO whose name alone could move markets, a single father who controlled empires but couldn't control the metal box now holding him prisoner. She was nobody's priority, just another applicant with worn shoes and a thin folder, invisible to systems designed to filter out people exactly like her. Neither knew that this malfunction would become the most valuable moment of their lives. If you stay until the end, drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The morning started like every other morning in Ethan Cole's meticulously constructed life, with precision, control, and the absolute certainty that every second had been accounted for. He stood in his penthouse bathroom at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule, watching the city awaken below through floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more than most people's homes. The skyline glittered with ambition, each building a testament to someone's dream, someone's empire. His own tower stood tallest among them, a steel and glass monument to 20 years of calculated risks and ruthless efficiency. Ethan adjusted his tie, charcoal gray, silk, nodded with the kind of perfection that came from muscle memory rather than thought. His reflection stared back at him, sharp jaw, eyes that had learned to reveal nothing, hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples despite being only 42. He looked like success was supposed to look, felt like it too, most days. The reflection didn't show the exhaustion. "Daddy?" A small voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to find his daughter, Sophie, standing in the doorway clutching her stuffed rabbit. She was 7 years old, dark hair tangled from sleep, wearing the princess pajamas she'd insisted on despite his suggestion that she was getting too old for them. In her eyes, he saw the question she asked every morning without words. "Are you leaving again?" "Morning, sweetheart." He crouched down to her level, something the business magazines would never photograph. The billionaire CEO on his knees before the one person whose opinion actually mattered. "Did you sleep okay?" Sophie nodded, but her grip on the rabbit tightened. "Mrs. Patterson says you have another late meeting tonight." Mrs. Patterson, the nanny, the third one this year, because the first two couldn't handle Sophie's nightmares, the ones that started after her mother walked out 18 months ago without looking back. Walked out on both of them, actually, though Ethan had stopped being surprised by betrayal years before that. "I'll try to be home for dinner," he said, knowing even as the words left his mouth that they were probably a lie. The merger with Tecton Industries had been 6 months in the making. Today was the final presentation, the moment where he'd either secure his company's dominance for the next decade or watch competitors swoop in like vultures. Missing it wasn't an option. Sophie's face did that thing children's faces do when they're learning not to hope too hard. It broke something in him every time. "I'll be home," he said more firmly, making a promise he had no idea how to keep. "I promise." She smiled then, small and tentative, and threw her arms around his neck. He held her for exactly 15 seconds, long enough to mean it, short enough to stay on schedule, before kissing her forehead and standing. "Mrs. Patterson will make you breakfast. Be good at school." "I'm always good," Sophie said, with the kind of earnestness that made him wonder what he'd done to deserve her. By 6:32 a.m., Ethan was in his car, a black Mercedes that had been detailed the night before, being driven toward his office by Marcus, who'd been his driver for 8 years and knew better than to attempt conversation. The city slid past the tinted windows, coffee shops opening, street vendors setting up, early joggers pounding pavement with the determination of people trying to outrun their own limitations. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly. His assistant, Miranda, had already sent the morning briefing. 17 emails requiring immediate attention, 4 calls he needed to return before 9 a.m., a reminder that the Tecton presentation was at 2 p.m. and could not, under any circumstances, be rescheduled or delayed. He scrolled through the emails with practiced efficiency, firing off responses that were brief to the point of terseness. His leadership style had been described in business journals as demanding, exacting, and once, memorably, frighteningly precise. He preferred to think of it as simply refusing to accept mediocrity. The car pulled up to Cole Industries headquarters at 7:04 a.m. The building rose 47 stories above the financial district, its facade a study in modern architecture, all clean lines and reflective glass that threw the city's image back at itself. The lobby alone had cost $12 million to renovate, every detail curated to send a message. We are untouchable. We are inevitable. Ethan strode through the entrance, nodding curtly to the security guard whose name he'd never learned. The morning shift was just arriving, junior executives, administrative staff, the machinery that kept the empire running. They parted for him automatically, some mumbling greetings he didn't acknowledge, others simply averting their eyes as if his presence was too bright to look at directly. He'd cultivated that distance deliberately. Familiarity bred complacency. Respect came from maintaining clear boundaries between leadership and everyone else. The elevator bank stood ahead, 6 elevators servicing the tower's 47 floors. The middle one, his elevator, though no formal designation existed, stood waiting, doors open like a mouth ready to swallow him into another day of controlled chaos. Ethan stepped inside and pressed 43. The executive floor. His floor. The doors began to slide shut. "Wait! Hold it, please!" The voice came from outside, breathless and desperate. Ethan's hand moved toward the door close button out of pure instinct. He didn't have time for delays. But some deeper reflex, perhaps the same one that made him crouch for his daughter's hugs, made him press door open instead. A young woman stumbled into the elevator, nearly dropping the thin folder she clutched against her chest. "Thank you," she gasped, pressing herself against the opposite wall as if trying to take up as little space as possible. "Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I thought I'd miss it." "What floor?" Ethan's voice came out clipped, professional, already dismissing her. 7, please." She was still catching her breath, one hand pressed to her chest. "The HR department. I have an interview at 7:30, and the subway was delayed, and I just—" She stopped herself, seeming to realize she was explaining her life to a stranger who hadn't asked. 7? Just 7. Please." He pressed the button without comment and stepped back to his corner of the elevator, pulling out his phone to make it clear he had no interest in conversation. The elevator began its ascent with a soft mechanical hum. Ethan glanced at the woman from the corner of his eye, the kind of quick assessment he'd trained himself to make in boardrooms and negotiations. Early 20s, maybe 25 at most. Clothes that had been chosen with care but showed their age. The skirt had been hemmed inexpertly, the blouse pressed but slightly faded from too many washings. Shoes that were professional but scuffed at the toes. The folder she held was one of those cheap manila ones from a drugstore, edges already softening. Everything about her screamed trying too hard with too little. Her hair had been pulled back into what was probably meant to be a neat bun, but strands had escaped during her sprint to catch the elevator, framing a face that was younger than her eyes suggested. Those eyes, dark, wide, carrying the kind of exhaustion that came from chronic stress rather than just one late night, stared at the floor numbers as they climbed. 3rd floor, 4th floor. She shifted her weight, and Ethan noticed her hands trembling slightly where they gripped the folder. Nerves, obviously. The interview. Some entry-level position, probably, given that she was heading to HR on the 7th floor, rather than the executive suites above. He returned his attention to his phone, dismissing her from his thoughts as thoroughly as he'd dismissed the security guard, the junior executives, every other person who existed at the periphery of his carefully controlled world. The elevator passed the 5th floor, then it shuddered. The movement was subtle at first, just a slight hiccup in the smooth ascent, the kind of thing that might have been imagination. But then it happened again, more pronounced this time, accompanied by a grinding sound that vibrated through the metal walls. Ethan looked up from his phone. The woman's eyes had gone wide, her knuckles white where she gripped the handrail that ran along the elevator's interior. "That's normal, right?" Her voice was tight with forced calm. "That sound? That's normal?" Before Ethan could answer, not that he had an answer, the elevator jolted hard enough to knock them both off balance. The lights flickered once, twice, then settled into an eerie dimness as the emergency lighting kicked in. And then everything stopped. The hum of motion ceased. The floor numbers froze between 5 and 6, the display flickering uncertainly. The absolute silence that followed was somehow louder than any alarm could have been. They were stuck. Ethan stared at the control panel as if his gaze alone could force the machinery back into submission. His mind immediately began calculating. how long for building maintenance to respond, how quickly they could be extracted, what meetings would be delayed, how this would cascade through his precisely planned day. The Tecton presentation was in 6 hours and 47 minutes. That was still manageable. Uncomfortable, inconvenient, but manageable. He pressed the alarm button. A shrill bell echoed through the elevator shaft, then cut off, leaving them in silence again. He pressed it again. Same result. "Is it working?" the woman asked. Her voice had gone quiet, controlled in a way that suggested she was forcing it to be. "No." Ethan pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course. Elevator shafts were notorious dead zones. He looked at her. "Do you have a phone?" She nodded quickly, pulling a battered smartphone from her purse. One of those models from 3 generations ago, screen protector cracked at the corner. Her hand shook as she checked it. Nothing. No bars. Ethan moved to the emergency call box, lifting the receiver. Static crackled through the line, then nothing. Dead. He replaced it with more force than necessary, the plastic clattering against the metal housing. "Okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "Okay. Building maintenance monitors all elevators. The system will have registered the malfunction. Someone will respond soon." How soon? The woman had slid down to sit on the floor, her folder still clutched to her chest, knees pulled up. She looked very small suddenly, very young. "I don't know." Ethan checked his watch. 7:11 a.m. Could be minutes, could be longer. "I have an interview at 7:30. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I took 2 buses and the subway to get here. If I miss this—" She stopped, pressing her lips together as if physically holding back the words. "Never mind, it's fine. It'll be fine." It was clearly not fine, but Ethan had spent 20 years learning not to absorb other people's problems. So he simply nodded and returned to examining the control panel, looking for something, anything, that might give them control over the situation. There was nothing. Minutes crawled past. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the elevator's interior, turning the small space into something that felt progressively smaller. The air, which had seemed perfectly adequate when they were moving, now felt close, warm, stale. Ethan loosened his tie, just slightly. The woman— girl, really, he'd decided, though something about the weight in her eyes suggested she'd earned the right to be called a woman. Had her head tilted back against the wall, eyes closed, breathing deliberately slow. "Are you claustrophobic?" he asked, more out of practical concern than sympathy. The last thing he needed was her panicking, hyperventilating, making the situation even more complicated. Her eyes opened. "No, just—" she gestured vaguely, "trying to stay calm. You're doing well." The words came out before he could consider whether they were appropriate. Something about the forced steadiness in her expression made him remember Sophie's face when she tried to be brave about things that scared her. A small, bitter smile crossed the woman's face. Practice. Practice staying calm in stuck elevators. Practice dealing with things going wrong. She said it matter-of-factly. No self-pity, just stating a fact about her life. You get good at it after a while. Ethan found himself studying her again, this time with curiosity rather than dismissal. "The interview," he heard himself say. "What position?" "Administrative assistant, in the finance department." She glanced down at her folder. "It's not— I know it's not impressive or anything, but it's steady. Benefits. That's what matters." "You don't sound particularly excited about it." She looked up at him, and for a moment something sharp flickered in those tired eyes. "I'm excited about being able to pay rent." "Does that count?" The directness of it caught him off guard. In his world, people wrapped their desperation in ambition, dressed neat up as aspiration. No one simply said, "I need money to survive." "I didn't mean—" he started. "I know." She cut him off, but gently. "Sorry, I'm just— it's been a long few months. Job hunting when you're broke is basically a full-time job that doesn't pay anything. And every interview that doesn't work out feels like—" She stopped herself again, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems." We're trapped in an elevator. Ethan surprised himself by sliding down to sit on the floor across from her, something he couldn't remember doing in a public space since ever. "Neither of us is going anywhere?" She laughed at that, A real laugh, startled and genuine. Fair point. Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Less hostile, just two people stuck together, waiting. What company is the interview with? Ethan asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear her say it. Coal Industries? She gestured vaguely upward. This building, actually. I've applied here before, but I never heard back. This time I got called in, though, so... She shrugged. Maybe third time's the charm. Third time. Meaning she'd applied at least twice before and been rejected, or more likely, filtered out by the automated system that screened thousands of applications. Ethan had approved that system himself 3 years ago. Efficient. Effective. Saved the HR department countless hours by eliminating unqualified candidates before human eyes ever saw them. Saved time by making people like the woman across from him invisible. What do you know about the company? He kept his voice neutral, curious what the view looked like from outside the tower. She considered the question carefully, as if it might be a test. It's one of the biggest tech consultancy firms in the city. Solid reputation, good benefits from what I've heard, growth potential. She paused. Honestly, it feels kind of, I don't know, impersonal. Like, I've read everything I can find about Coal Industries, and it's all very impressive, but there's no... She struggled for the word. There's no face to it, no sense of who's actually making the decisions. It's just this big, efficient machine. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. And that bothers you? Not bothers exactly. She pulled her knees closer. It's just hard to get excited about being a small cog in a machine that doesn't really care if you're there or not. But like I said, rent, bills, reality. Another of those small, sad smiles. Beggars can't be choosers. The phrase hung in the air between them. Beggars can't be choosers. She'd just described his company, his life's work, as something people settled for out of desperation rather than desire. And the worst part was, she was right. When had that happened? When had Coal Industries transformed from his vision, a company that solved real problems that made a difference, into just another corporate entity people endured for a paycheck? You don't agree with that, the woman said, watching his face. The beggars and choosers thing. I can see it in your expression. I just think you're selling yourself short. The words came out rougher than he intended. If you're talented, if you're capable, you shouldn't have to beg for anything. You should have options. Should. She repeated the word like it was foreign. That's a nice word. Should. In a perfect world, sure. But in this world? She gestured around the stopped elevator. Sometimes you take what you can get and hope it's enough. Her phone buzzed suddenly, startling them both. She grabbed it, hope flashing across her face, then dying just as quickly. Text came through before we lost signal completely. My roommate, asking if I'm okay. She typed out a quick response, hit send, then stared at the failed to send message. Great. People will be worried about you? Ethan asked. My roommate, probably. My little brother. Something softened in her expression at the mention of her brother. He's 14. Smart kid. Smarter than me, definitely. He's got a scholarship to a good high school, which is amazing, but the extras, textbooks, lab fees, all the stuff the scholarship doesn't cover. That's why I need this job to work out. She caught herself. Sorry. Again, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Because we're stuck in an elevator and there's nothing else to do, Ethan said. But that wasn't quite true. There was something about her openness, the way she spoke about her struggles without making them a performance, that made him want to keep listening. Your brother, you're putting him through school? Our parents died 3 years ago. Car accident. She said it the way people speak about old wounds, painful still, but scarred over enough to handle. He was 11, I was 22. Suddenly I was his guardian, his parent, everything. And I was working retail making barely enough for my own studio apartment, so... She shrugged. You figure it out. You have to. Ethan thought about Sophie, about how desperately he tried to give her stability, security, everything he'd never had growing up. The difference was, he had resources, money, power. This woman had nothing but determination and was somehow still fighting. That's why the interview matters, he said quietly. That's why the interview matters, she confirmed. Administrative assistant pays $42,000 a year. That's $14,000 more than I'm making now. That's the difference between scraping by and actually having savings. Between my brother going to college someday or not. Her voice roughened. So, yeah, I really need to not screw this up. Ethan checked his watch. 7:34 a.m. Her interview had already started without her. He wondered if whoever was supposed to meet with her would wait, or if they'd mark her as a no-show and move on to the next candidate. Probably the latter. Efficiency above all else. That was his policy, after all. They'll understand, he found himself saying, though he wasn't sure they would, when you explain what happened. Will they? She didn't sound convinced. I mean, I know it's not my fault, but there's always someone else, right? Someone who showed up on time, who didn't have an excuse. And most places, they don't really care about your reasons. They just care about results. She was describing his own philosophy back to him, the worldview he'd built his empire on. Results matter. Excuses don't. It sounded different coming from the other side. More minutes passed. The elevator remained stubbornly still. Ethan sent up a mental calculation of what this delay was costing him. Not in money, but in momentum, in the delicate timing of a day that had been choreographed down to the minute. The woman, he still didn't know her name, had gone quiet, staring at her folder. He could see her lips moving slightly, practicing something. Interview answers probably. Preparing for a meeting she was currently missing. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, surprised. "Maya. Maya Santos. I know who you are." She said it gently, almost apologetically. "I mean, I didn't recognize you at first, but your watch." She nodded at his wrist. "Patek Philippe. Custom made from what I can see. And the suit is bespoke, probably Savile Row. Plus you pressed 43, which is the executive floor. And you have this..." She gestured vaguely at him. "Presence. Like you're used to people doing what you want." A pause. "You're Ethan Cole." The recognition settled over the moment like a frost. The easy conversation they'd been having suddenly felt different, weighted with the knowledge of who he was, what he represented. "Does that change things?" he asked, curious about her answer. Maya considered it seriously. "I don't know, does it?" "It shouldn't." "But it does." She said it without accusation. "You own the company I'm trying to work for. You probably have 1,000 meetings more important than being stuck here. And I'm just..." She stopped. "Just what?" "Nobody." The word came out flat. "One of thousands of applicants, completely replaceable." "Nobody's completely replaceable," Ethan said. But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. He'd built his company on the principle of efficiency, of systems that could function regardless of individual personnel. How many employees had he lost over the years without the company missing a beat? "That's a nice thing to say." Maya's smile was sad. "But we both know it's not true. Not really. The machine keeps running no matter who's in it." There was that word again. Machine. His company. His life's work. Reduced to mechanical inevitability. The elevator shuddered suddenly, a deep groaning vibration that rattled through the walls. Both of them tensed. For a moment, Ethan thought they might be moving again, but the shudder faded and everything went still once more. "How long do you think we'll be stuck?" Maya's voice had tightened again. "I don't know." Ethan checked his phone again. Still no signal. 7:52 a.m. now. The Tecton meeting was in 6 hours, still time, but the window was closing. Building maintenance should have noticed by now. Emergency protocols should be in effect. "Should," Maya echoed his earlier word. There's that word again. Despite everything, he smiled. Fair point. They fell into silence again. Ethan found his mind wandering to Sophie, to the promise he'd made at breakfast. "I'll be home for dinner." That was looking increasingly unlikely, even if they got out of here in the next few minutes. The day was already derailed, his schedule in chaos. "Can I ask you something?" Maya's voice broke through his thoughts. "Sure." "Why did you hold the elevator door when I was running late?" She was watching him carefully. "You were about to let it close. I saw your hand move toward the button, but then you didn't." Ethan thought about it. Why had he opened the door? Habit? Impulse? Some vestige of basic human decency that hadn't been completely optimized out of him? "I don't know," he admitted. Maybe I was having a good morning. Were you? The question was more complicated than it should have been. My daughter hugged me before I left for work, so yes, I suppose I was. You have a daughter. Maya's expression softened. How old? 7, Sophie. Saying her name made something in his chest tighten. She'd be at school now if Mrs. Patterson had gotten her there on time. Probably sitting in her classroom, doodling in the margins of her workbook instead of paying attention. She took after him in that way, always thinking about something other than what she was supposed to be thinking about. That must be hard, Maya said quietly. Balancing everything, being a parent and running a company. It's impossible, Ethan said, the admission escaping before he could stop it. Every day I have to choose between being a good father and being a good CEO. And I never feel like I'm succeeding at either one. But you try. It wasn't a question. That counts for something. Does it? He heard his own bitterness. When you're constantly disappointing the one person who should be able to count on you. You made her a promise this morning, Maya said, about dinner. That's why you keep checking your watch. You're trying to figure out if you can still keep it. She was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. I'm trying to figure out a lot of things. Here's what I know about being a parent, Maya said, her voice taking on a different quality, older, wearier. You're going to break some promises. That's just reality. But if you keep trying, if you keep showing up even when you mess up, that matters more than perfection. You sound like you have experience with this. With my brother, yeah. I'm not his parent, but close enough. She smiled slightly. He doesn't care that our apartment is small or that sometimes we eat ramen for dinner 3 nights in a row. He cares that I show up to his school events, that I help with his homework even when I'm exhausted, that I remember what he tells me about his friends, his teachers, his life. She paused. Your daughter probably doesn't care about the size of your house or the importance of your meetings. She cares if you remember the stuffed rabbit. What? This morning, before you left. I'm guessing your daughter was holding a stuffed animal, probably a rabbit, based on the trace of gray-white fur on your right sleeve, just below the elbow. That's about where a 7-year-old's head would reach when you crouched down to hug her. Maya gestured toward his arm. The fur is synthetic, likely from a well-loved toy, which means you noticed it. You hugged her low enough for the rabbit to press against you. That's not the action of someone who doesn't care. Ethan stared at her, then at his sleeve where, yes, a few strands of gray-white synthetic fur clung to the charcoal fabric. He'd hugged Sophie while she was holding Mr. Hoppy. He'd even knelt down for it, something he didn't have to do but always did because it made her smile. You have a good eye for detail, he said finally. I have a good eye for people. Maya shrugged. Comes from years of watching, waiting, trying to figure out what people want so I can give it to them. Job interviews, customer service, life. She looked down at her folder. For all the good it does me. It got you an interview. An interview I'm currently missing. But she said it without heat. Story of my life, honestly. Almost, but not quite. So close you can taste it, then something goes wrong. Like elevator malfunctions. Like everything. She leaned her head back against the wall. 3 years ago, I almost got into law school. Full-ride scholarship. Then my parents died and I had to drop out of undergrad to take care of my brother. 2 years ago, I almost got promoted to management at the store where I worked. Then the company downsized and eliminated the position. 6 months ago, I almost... She stopped. Never mind. It doesn't matter. What happened 6 months ago? Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I met someone. A good guy. Kind. Patient. He said he understood about my brother, about my situation. For a while I thought maybe I could have something good, you know? Not just survival, but actual happiness. She closed her eyes. Then he got a job offer in another city. Asked me to come with him, and I couldn't because of my brother, because of responsibilities, because life. Did he wait? For about a month? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't blame him. Why would anyone wait for someone who can't give them anything but complications? Ethan thought about his ex-wife, about how she'd described their marriage as death by 1,000 responsibilities, about how she'd said he loved his company more than her, loved his work more than their family, about how she'd been right. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. I'm not." Maya opened her eyes. "I made my choice. My brother needed me more than I needed a relationship. That's just how it is." The way she said it, pragmatic, resigned, without self-pity, reminded him of himself in some strange way. Different circumstances, vastly different resources, but the same fundamental calculation. What am I willing to sacrifice to protect what matters most? For her, it was everything. Every dream, every chance at happiness, every possibility of a different life. For him, what had he sacrificed? His marriage, time with his daughter, the vision he'd once had of building something meaningful rather than just profitable. They'd both given up so much. The difference was, he'd gotten power in return. She'd gotten nothing but more struggle. "The company," he heard himself say. "Coal Industries. When you said it feels impersonal, that it's just a machine, you're right." Maya looked at him in surprise. "It wasn't always like that," he continued. "When I started the company, it was about solving problems, real problems. I wanted to build something that mattered, that made a difference. But somewhere along the way," he gestured vaguely, "growth became the goal instead of the means. Efficiency replaced purpose. And now it's exactly what you said. A machine. One that works perfectly, but doesn't actually stand for anything." "You could change that," Maya said. "Couldn't you?" "Could I?" Ethan shook his head. "The machine has momentum. Shareholders, boards of directors, quarterly reports. Thousands of employees depending on stability. You don't just change course on something that big." "Why not?" The question was simple, direct. "If you built it, you can rebuild it. Can't you?" Before he could answer, the elevator lurched violently. The emergency lights flickered, plunging them into complete darkness for a heart-stopping second before stuttering back to life. Maya made a small, frightened sound. "It's okay," Ethan said, surprising himself by moving across the elevator to sit beside her. Not touching, but close enough that she wouldn't feel alone. "The emergency systems are designed to handle this." "Are they working?" Her voice shook slightly. "They're keeping the lights on. That's something." They sat in silence, both acutely aware of how fragile their situation was. Suspended between floors in a metal box, dependent on systems that had already failed once. "I should tell you something," Maya said quietly. "About those applications to Coal Industries. The ones I sent before. You don't have to. I want to." She turned to look at him in the dim light. "The first time I applied, I was honest. Said I needed the job to support my brother, that I didn't have traditional qualifications, but I was a hard worker. I thought honesty mattered." She laughed bitterly. "Automated rejection in 3 days. Thank you for your interest." "And the second time?" "I lied. Made up internships I never had, stretched my retail experience into customer success management, acted like I'd been groomed for corporate life instead of just trying to survive it." She paused. "That one took 5 days to reject." Ethan felt something twist in his gut. He'd approved those automated systems, celebrated their efficiency. "This time," Maya continued, "I didn't apply. A friend who works in your mailroom saw the posting, knew I needed work, and handed my resume directly to someone in HR. Bypassed the system entirely. That's the only reason I got an interview." "The system failed you," Ethan said. "The system worked exactly as designed," Maya corrected. "It filtered out people like me. People without the right credentials, the right background, the right... whatever it is that makes someone look good on paper." She met his eyes. "And now I'm sitting here with the person who designed that system, trapped in an elevator, missing the one chance I had to prove I'm more than what shows up on a resume." The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the truth of what she was saying. How many Maya Santoses had his systems filtered out? How many capable, determined, resilient people had never made it past the algorithms because they didn't fit the profile of what success was supposed to look like? "I'm sorry," he said. The words felt inadequate. "Don't apologize." Maya's voice was firm. "You built something efficient. That's what companies need. I'm just..." She sighed. "I'm just one of the casualties of efficiency." They sat in the growing silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Ethan's mind was racing, recalculating everything he thought he knew about his company, his leadership, his legacy. 8:23 a.m. The Tecton meeting was in 5 hours and 37 minutes. Somehow, that felt less important than it had an hour ago. The elevator groaned again, a deep mechanical sound that vibrated through their bones. Then, without warning, it shuddered and began to move. Both of them scrambled to their feet. The numbers on the display flickered to life. 5, 6, 7. The elevator slowed, stopped smoothly, and the doors slid open onto the 7th floor. Maya grabbed her folder, moving toward the exit, then paused and turned back. Thank you for the conversation, for... She searched for words. For seeing me, even if it doesn't matter. It matters, Ethan said, and meant it. She smiled, sad, resigned, already preparing herself for disappointment, and stepped out of the elevator. The doors began to close. Ethan stared at them, his hand hovering over the control panel. Every rational thought told him to let her go, to head to his office, to salvage what he could of the day. But something Maya had said kept echoing in his mind. If you built it, you can rebuild it. And suddenly, he understood. The most important meeting of his day wasn't happening at 2 p.m. with Tecton Industries. It was happening right now, on the 7th floor, with a woman who'd been invisible to his systems but was more real than any spreadsheet or quarterly report. Ethan pressed the door open button. Maya turned back, confusion crossing her face as she saw him stepping out of the elevator. Mr. Cole, is everything... Your interview, he interrupted. I'm conducting it. Her eyes went wide. What? You need 5 minutes to compose yourself? He checked his watch, a gesture more automatic than necessary. The conference room at the end of the hall. I'll meet you there. But you can't. She was stammering, struggling to process what was happening. You're the CEO. You don't interview administrative assistants. Today I do. He straightened his jacket, already moving toward the conference room, then stopped and looked back at her. And Maya, come as you are. No performance. No lies about credentials you don't have. Just tell me the truth. He walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway, folder clutched to her chest, looking like she'd just witnessed something impossible. Maybe she had. Maybe they both had. Maya stood frozen in the hallway, watching Ethan Cole's back as he disappeared around the corner toward the conference room. Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. The CEO of Cole Industries, the man whose company employed over 5,000 people, whose decisions moved markets, whose time was measured in millions of dollars per hour, had just told her he was conducting her interview personally. It was impossible. It was happening. Her hands trembled as she looked down at her folder, at the cheap manila paper that suddenly felt absurdly inadequate. Inside was her resume, printed on regular copy paper because the good resume paper cost $8 more and she couldn't justify the expense. A list of references from retail managers and former professors who probably barely remembered her. A cover letter she'd rewritten 17 times, trying to sound professional without sounding desperate. None of it mattered now. He'd said to come as she was, to tell the truth, no performance. The problem was Maya had spent so long performing, crafting the version of herself that might be employable, might be acceptable, might be enough, that she wasn't entirely sure what the truth looked like anymore. She caught her reflection in the glass door of a nearby office. Her hair was a mess from the sprint to catch the elevator and the stress of being trapped. Her blouse had wrinkled where she'd been sitting against the elevator wall. She looked exactly like what she was, exhausted, overwhelmed, barely holding it together. Come as you are. Maya took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the conference room. The door was open. Ethan sat at the head of a long table, his posture somehow both relaxed and commanding. The room itself was everything she'd expected from a Fortune 500 company. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather chairs that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a presentation screen that covered most of one wall. The morning light streamed through the windows, making everything look sharp and expensive. She felt like a smudge on a clean page. Come in, Ethan said, gesturing to the chair beside him rather than across the table. Close the door. Maya did as instructed, her footsteps too loud on the polished floor. She sat, placing her folder on the table with hands that still hadn't stopped shaking. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan was watching her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. In the elevator, In the dimness and the shared vulnerability of being trapped, he'd seemed almost human. Here, in his element, surrounded by the trappings of his power, he was something else entirely. "You're nervous," he observed. "Of course I'm nervous." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You're Ethan Cole. And an hour ago, I was just the guy stuck in an elevator with you." He leaned back in his chair. "What changed?" "Context." Maya gestured around the room. All of this. In the elevator, we were just two people. Here, you're she struggled for the right word. "You're everything I'm not." "Which is?" "Successful, powerful, someone who matters." She said it without self-pity, just stating facts. "I'm someone who's grateful for the chance to answer phones and file paperwork." Ethan's expression shifted, something that might have been pain crossing his features. "Is that really what you think this job is?" "Isn't it?" Maya pulled out her resume, sliding it across the table. "Administrative assistant, $42,000 a year. Support the finance department with clerical duties. It's right there in the job posting." He glanced at the resume but didn't pick it up. "Tell me something that's not on that paper." "What do you want to know?" "Anything. Everything." Ethan stood, moving to the windows, his back to her. "You spent an hour telling me your life story in an elevator. Now you're giving me the corporate version. Sanitized, safe, forgettable. I'm asking for the real one." Maya felt something crack inside her, the careful wall she'd built between survival and honesty. "You want the real version? Fine. I'm 25 years old and I feel 50. I wake up every morning at 5:30 because that's when my brother needs breakfast before school, and I work until midnight most nights because one job isn't enough to cover rent and food and his school fees. I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I eat ramen 3 nights a week so he can have real food. I'm constantly one emergency away from losing everything." She stood up, pacing to the opposite side of the room because sitting still felt impossible. "I applied to Cole Industries 3 times because I'm desperate, not because I have some burning passion for corporate finance. I need health insurance because I haven't seen a doctor in 18 months and I'm pretty sure that pain in my side is something I should get checked. I need stability because my brother deserves better than watching me fall apart trying to hold our lives together." The words kept coming, unstoppable now. "And the truth is, I'm terrified. Terrified that this interview is some kind of cosmic joke. Terrified that you're going to realize I'm not special or talented or anything except stubborn. Terrified that even if you give me this job, I'll mess it up somehow, because that's what always happens. I get close, so close, and then something goes wrong and I'm back to square one." She stopped, breathing hard, realizing she'd just said everything she wasn't supposed to say in a job interview. Every rule of professional conduct she'd learned had just evaporated in a flood of honest desperation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "You asked for the truth. That's it. I'm a mess. But I'm a hard-working mess, and I show up, and I don't quit even when everything falls apart. That's all I've got." The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya couldn't bring herself to look at Ethan, couldn't bear to see disappointment or pity or whatever expression he was wearing. She'd blown it. Completely, spectacularly blown it. "My wife left me 18 months ago." Maya's head snapped up. Ethan was still facing the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "She said I was married to my work. Said our daughter would grow up not knowing me because I was always here, always in meetings, always choosing the company over everything else." His voice was quiet, controlled, but Maya could hear the edge of pain beneath it. She was right. "I missed Sophie's first words because I was in Tokyo closing a deal. Missed her first day of kindergarten because of a board meeting I couldn't reschedule. Missed 1,000 small moments that you don't get back." He turned to face her. "My daughter has nightmares. Did you know that? She wakes up crying because she dreams her mother is leaving again, or that I'm leaving, or that she's alone. And the worst part is, I don't know how to fix it. I can run a company with 5,000 employees. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals, but I can't figure out how to make my 7-year-old feel safe." Maya felt her throat tighten. This wasn't the billionaire CEO anymore. This was just a father, as lost as she was, as scared. "So when you talk about being terrified," Ethan continued, "about feeling like you're one mistake away from everything falling apart, I understand that. Different circumstances, but the same fear, the same exhaustion. He moved back to the table, sitting down again. The difference is, you don't have a choice. You have to keep fighting because your brother depends on you. I do have a choice. And most days, I choose the easy thing, work I can control, over the hard thing, which is being present for the one person who needs me most. Maya sat down slowly, her anger and defensiveness draining away. Why are you telling me this? Because an hour ago, you said something that I can't stop thinking about. Ethan picked up her resume, finally looking at it. You said the company feels impersonal, like a machine. And you were right. I built that machine and I'm proud of its efficiency, but somewhere along the way I forgot what it was for. I forgot that businesses are made of people, not just processes. He set the resume down. Your application was rejected twice by an automated system. A computer algorithm decided you weren't qualified without a human ever seeing your resume, without anyone knowing that you're putting yourself through hell to give your brother a better life, without understanding that the person who can maintain that level of commitment and resilience is exactly the kind of person any company should want. You can't hire everyone with a sad story, Maya said. That's not how businesses work. No, but I can stop filtering people out based solely on credentials and pedigree. Ethan leaned forward. Do you know what I learned from our conversation in the elevator? You're observant. You noticed details about my daughter from rabbit fur on my sleeve. You're analytical. You assessed my wealth and position from my watch and suit within minutes. You're empathetic. You understood what I was really asking even when I couldn't articulate it properly. Those are skills, real skills, but none of them show up on a resume. Those are just survival skills, Maya protested. Reading people, figuring out what they want. That's what you learn when you're broke and desperate. Exactly. You've been trained by necessity in ways that no business school could teach. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm not offering you the administrative assistant position. Maya's heart sank. Of course, she'd been stupid to hope. I understand. I'm offering you something else. Ethan looked up from his phone. We're expanding the client services division, creating a new position focused on relationship management, understanding what clients actually need versus what they say they need, translating between technical teams and real-world applications, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. Mr. Cole, it pays $65,000 a year, full benefits, including health insurance that covers dependents. Your brother would qualify. And before you say you're not qualified, let me be clear. No one is qualified because the position doesn't exist yet. I'm creating it. The question is whether you want it. Maya stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. $65,000. That was more than she'd made in her best year by almost double. Health insurance for her brother, who still used the same inhaler from 6 months ago, even though it was probably expired. A position that didn't exist, created for her. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. This morning I promised my daughter I'd be home for dinner. It was a lie when I said it, and we both knew it. I had the Tecton merger presentation this afternoon, the biggest deal of the year, probably the biggest of my career. Nothing was going to make me miss that meeting. He glanced at his watch. It starts in 5 hours. I should be preparing right now, reviewing presentations, strategizing with my team. Instead, I'm here. And I'm realizing that this conversation, this moment, is more important than any merger. That doesn't make sense, Maya said. The merger affects thousands of people, jobs, futures, everything. I'm just one person. You're not just one person. You're a symptom of a larger problem. Ethan stood, walking to the presentation screen. He pulled up a document, financial projections, employee retention rates, customer satisfaction scores. Look at these numbers. Revenue is up. Stock price is climbing. By every metric that matters to shareholders, Cole Industries is thriving. He scrolled to another page. Now look at these. Employee engagement scores have dropped every quarter for 2 years. Customer complaints about impersonal service are increasing. Our best people are leaving for smaller companies that pay less but feel more meaningful. The machine is working, but the people inside it are dying. Maya studied the charts, seeing patterns that probably weren't visible to most. You're succeeding financially but failing humanly. Exactly. Ethan closed the presentation. And I didn't see it until you pointed it out. Or maybe I saw it and didn't want to acknowledge it, because changing course is hard and staying efficient is easy. So hiring me is what? A symbolic gesture? Maya couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. Proof that you care about the little people? No. The word came out sharp. Hiring you is the first step in rebuilding this company into something that actually matters. Something with a face, as you put it. And I need someone who understands what it's like on the other side of the algorithm, who knows what it feels like to be filtered out and dismissed and treated like you're replaceable. He moved back to the table, sitting down again, and for the first time since they'd entered the conference room, he looked uncertain. I'm offering you a real position with real responsibilities. You'll work directly with client teams, identify gaps in our service delivery, help us understand why people choose us or leave us. It won't be easy. You'll be dealing with executives who've been here for decades and don't want to change. You'll face resistance, skepticism, maybe hostility. Why would I want that job? Maya asked, but she was already imagining it. Having a voice, mattering, making things better for people like her who'd been invisible. Because you're angry. Ethan said it with certainty. You've been filtered out, rejected, dismissed as not good enough. And anger, directed properly, is one of the most powerful motivators there is. You could help make sure the next person in your situation doesn't face the same barriers. You could change the machine from the inside. Maya felt tears prickling at her eyes and forced them back. You don't know me. We talked for an hour in a stuck elevator. That's not enough to trust someone with this kind of responsibility. You're right, it's not. Ethan pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back, and slid it across the table. So here's what I'm proposing. Trial period, 30 days. You work with my executive team, sit in on client meetings, observe how we operate. If at the end of 30 days you think this company is worth saving, that we can actually change things, you stay on permanently. If not, I'll write you a recommendation letter that will get you hired anywhere else you want to go. And if I fail, Maya picked up the card, seeing his direct number written on the back in sharp, precise handwriting. If I'm not good enough after all, then we'll both have learned something important. He stood, extending his hand. But I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to be exactly what this company needs, even if they don't know it yet. Maya looked at his outstretched hand, at the opportunity he was offering, at the impossible turn her morning had taken. Every rational instinct told her to be suspicious, to question why a billionaire CEO would upend his schedule and create a position for a woman he'd met in an elevator. But beneath the suspicion was something else. Hope. Fragile and terrifying, but real. She took his hand. 30 days. 30 days, he agreed. Then unexpectedly he smiled. Not the corporate smile she'd seen in business magazines, but something genuine. Welcome to Coal Industries, Maya Santos. For real this time. The handshake lasted a moment too long, both of them aware they were committing to something bigger than an employment agreement. This was a mutual leap of faith. Him trusting her to help fix what he'd broken, her trusting him to actually let her try. When they finally released hands, Maya felt the weight of reality crashing back. When do I start? Today. Ethan was already moving toward the door. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork. In the meantime, you're shadowing me. Shadowing you? Maya followed him into the hallway, struggling to keep up with his suddenly quick pace. What does that mean? It means you're going to see exactly how this company operates, starting from the top. Board meetings, client calls, department reviews, all of it. You wanted to see the face behind the machine? You're about to see everything. They reached the elevator bank. Different elevators this time, not the one that had trapped them. Maya noticed Ethan hesitate before pressing the call button, a flicker of something crossing his face. Fear? Doubt? It's safe, she said quietly. Lightning doesn't strike twice. Let's hope not. He pressed the button. We're going to 43. The executive floor, where decisions were made, where power concentrated, where someone like Maya Santos had no business being. The elevator arrived. A different car, newer, gleaming. They stepped inside together, and this time when the doors closed and the car began to rise, there was no shudder, no malfunction, just smooth, efficient ascent. Maya watched the numbers climb, 8, 9, 10, and felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Mr. Cole? Ethan. He was checking his phone, scrolling through what looked like hundreds of unread messages. If we're going to work together, you should call me Ethan. Ethan. The name felt strange in her mouth, too familiar. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." He looked up from his phone. "Okay. Is this real? Or is this you feeling guilty about your automated system and making a grand gesture that you'll regret by tomorrow morning?" She forced herself to hold his gaze. "Because I can't afford to quit my current job based on a promise that might evaporate. I have too much riding on this." The elevator passed 20, 30, still climbing. Ethan put his phone away, giving her his full attention. "That's a fair question," he said. "And the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if you're going to be good at this job or if I'm capable of actually changing the culture I've spent 20 years building. I don't know if my executive team is going to accept you or fight you every step of the way." Maya felt her hope crumbling. "That's not reassuring. But here's what I do know." His voice was firm now, certain. "An hour ago, I was heading to my office to prepare for a meeting that I've been planning for 6 months. A meeting that represents everything I thought I wanted: growth, dominance, market share. And right now, I'm taking you to that office instead, and I'm going to cancel that meeting." "What?" Maya's eyes went wide. "No, you can't do that. Not for me. Not for you. For the company. For my daughter. For myself." The elevator slowed as it approached 43. "I'm canceling it because if I walk into that conference room and spend the next 4 hours talking about synergies and revenue projections and market positioning, I'm going to lose whatever clarity I gained from our conversation. I'm going to default back to the easy thing, being the CEO who maximizes shareholder value, instead of the hard thing, which is being the leader who builds something that actually matters." The doors opened onto a floor that was everything Maya expected. Expensive art on the walls, thick carpeting that swallowed sound, glass-walled offices with views that stretched to the horizon. A few people were visible, moving with purposeful efficiency, all of them looking like they belonged in a world that Maya had only ever observed from the outside. "Come on." Ethan stepped out, and Maya followed, feeling every eye turn toward them as they walked down the hallway. She could hear the whispers starting, see the confused glances. Who was this woman in her wrinkled blouse and scuffed shoes walking beside Ethan Cole like she had every right to be there? Nobody. That's who she'd been just 2 hours ago. Now she was something else. She just wasn't sure what. Ethan's office was at the end of the hall, double doors opening into a space that was somehow both intimidating and beautiful. More windows, a desk that looked hand-carved from a single piece of wood, chairs that were clearly designed for comfort and power in equal measure. On the credenza behind the desk sat a single photograph. Sophie, younger than she was now, laughing at something just out of frame. "Sit anywhere," Ethan said, moving to his desk and waking up his computer. "I need to make a call." Maya chose a chair near the window, watching the city spread out below. From this height, everything looked ordered, manageable, small. She wondered if that's how Ethan saw the world, from a distance that made problems look solvable. He was on the phone now, his voice crisp and professional. "Richard? Ethan Cole. I need you to cancel the Tecton presentation." A pause. "Yes, I know what day it is. Cancel it anyway." Another pause, longer this time. "Tell them I'll reschedule within the week. Something urgent came up." He listened for a moment, then his voice took on an edge. "Richard, I'm not asking. Reschedule it. We'll make it work." He ended the call and immediately made another one. "Miranda, I need you to clear my calendar for the rest of the day. Everything. Move what you can, cancel what you can't." He glanced at Maya. "And send someone from HR up immediately with new employee paperwork. Full benefits package, position title to be determined, salary $65,000 annual." A pause. "Yes, I'm sure. Just do it." Maya watched him work, seeing the machinery of power in action. One phone call, and meetings that had been scheduled for months vanished. One instruction, and HR would scramble to create paperwork for a position that didn't exist. This was what it looked like to control the world, or at least this corner of it. Ethan ended the call and sat back, looking suddenly exhausted. "Done." "You really canceled it," Maya said. "The biggest meeting of your career." "No, I postponed it." He rubbed his eyes, a gesture that made him look more human than she'd seen since the elevator. "There's a difference. The deal will still happen, just on a different timeline. But right now, this matters more." Why? Maya leaned forward. I still don't understand why you're doing this. And don't tell me it's about fixing the company culture because you could hire a consultant for that. You could implement new policies, change the algorithm, do 1,000 different things that don't involve gambling on someone you barely know. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. My father was a factory worker, spent 30 years on the same assembly line, came home every night with his hands cramped and his back aching. When I was 16, the company downsized. Let him go 3 years before retirement, before his pension vested. They gave him 2 weeks severance and a handshake from a manager who couldn't look him in the eye. He stood, moving to the window, his reflection transparent against the bright sky. I watched him spend the next 2 years sending out applications, going to interviews, being told he was overqualified or underqualified or just too old. I watched him shrink, bit by bit, until the man who taught me to tie my shoes and ride a bike was just this ghost shuffling around our apartment. Maya felt her chest tighten, understanding dawning. He died of a heart attack 2 months before I graduated high school. The doctor said it was genetic, just bad luck. But I knew better. The company killed him. Not directly, but they took away his purpose, his dignity, his sense of worth. And he couldn't survive without those things. Ethan turned to face her. I built Coal Industries to be different, to be better, to be the kind of company that valued people, that treated them like they mattered. But somewhere along the way, I became exactly what I hated. I became the manager who can't look people in the eye when I'm filtering them out of the system. I became the company that lets go of people like your applications without a second thought. He walked back to his desk, picking up Sophie's photograph. And this morning, when you described my company as a machine without a face, I heard my father's voice. I heard all the things he never said about what it felt like to be disposable, and I realized I was doing to thousands of people what that factory did to him. Maya understood now. This wasn't about her. It was about his father, about guilt and grief and the attempt to retroactively fix something that couldn't be fixed. I can't be your redemption, she said gently. I can't erase what happened to your father. I know that. Ethan set the photograph down. But maybe you can help me build something that wouldn't have thrown him away. Something that sees people like him, like you, as assets instead of liabilities. That's worth more than any merger. Before Maya could respond, there was a knock at the door. A woman in her 50s entered, carrying a tablet and looking professionally pleasant despite the obvious confusion in her eyes. Mr. Cole? I'm Susan from HR. You requested employment paperwork? Yes. This is Maya Santos. She's starting today in a new client services position. Ethan gestured to Maya. Susan will handle all the details, direct deposit, benefits enrollment, building access, everything you need. Susan's professional smile never wavered, but Maya could see the questions building behind her eyes. Who was this girl? Why was the CEO personally onboarding her? What was really happening here? Of course. Susan turned to Maya. If you'll come with me, we can get started on the paperwork. It should only take about an hour. Maya stood, looking at Ethan uncertainly. And after that? After that, you come back here. We have work to do. He was already turning to his computer, pulling up files, shifting into the mode she recognized from the elevator, focused, intense, in control. Maya followed Susan out of the office, down the hallway, into an elevator that descended to the HR floor. Susan made pleasant small talk about the weather, the building, the benefits package, but Maya barely heard her. Her mind was still in that office, still processing everything that had happened. An hour ago, she'd been nobody. Now she was somebody, or at least she was becoming somebody. The question was whether she could survive the transformation. The paperwork took 93 minutes, not 1 hour like Susan had promised. Maya signed forms she barely read, nodded through explanations of benefits packages and retirement contributions that felt surreal, given that 24 hours ago she'd been wondering if she could afford her brother's textbooks. Her hands cramped from writing her signature over and over, each one feeling like a commitment she wasn't sure she could keep. When it was finally done, Susan handed her a temporary ID badge with her photo, taken hastily in the HR office, Maya's hair still disheveled, her expression caught somewhere between disbelief and terror, and a manila folder containing copies of everything she'd signed. Your permanent badge will be ready tomorrow, Susan said, her professional warmth never quite reaching her eyes. Mr. Cole's assistant will coordinate your workspace assignment and technology setup. Do you have any questions? Maya had about 1,000 questions, but none that Susan could answer. So she just shook her head and made her way back to the elevator, clutching her new employee folder like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. The 43rd floor felt different now. She had a right to be here, at least on paper. The ID badge clipped to her blouse said so, but the looks she got from passing executives suggested they hadn't received that memo. She was still an intruder, still visibly wrong in her worn clothes and scuffed shoes. Ethan's office door was closed. Maya stood outside it, suddenly paralyzed by uncertainty. Was she supposed to knock? Just walk in? Wait for him to call her? The rules of this new world were foreign, and she had no map to navigate them. She knocked. Soft, tentative. "Come in." Ethan was on the phone when she entered, his voice clipped and impatient. "I don't care what the board prefers, Richard. We're implementing the changes starting Monday. If they have concerns, they can schedule time with me next week." He paused, listening. "No, this isn't negotiable. Send out the memo." He ended the call without a goodbye and looked up at Maya. Something in his expression had hardened since she'd left. The momentary vulnerability from earlier replaced by the steel she'd expect from a man who ran an empire. "All set?" he asked. Maya held up her badge. "Official as of 10:30 this morning." "Good." He stood, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. "We have a meeting in 5 minutes. Client presentation. You'll observe." "Wait, what?" Maya followed him toward the door. "I thought I was just shadowing, learning how things work. I'm not ready to sit in on actual meetings." "You'll never be ready if you wait until you feel ready." Ethan was already in the hallway, moving with the kind of purposeful stride that made people scatter. "The client is a healthcare technology company. They've been with us for 3 years, but their contract is up for renewal and they're considering switching to a competitor. Your job is to watch how we handle it." "My job is to watch?" Maya struggled to keep pace. "That's it?" "For now." He pressed the elevator button. "Later, I'll want your opinion on what we did wrong." The elevator arrived. The same one that had trapped them, Maya realized with a jolt of recognition. She hesitated before stepping inside, some primitive part of her brain screaming that lightning absolutely could strike twice. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "We can take the stairs if you prefer." "No." Maya forced herself to step inside. "I'm fine." They weren't fine. The moment the doors closed, Maya felt her chest tighten, her breathing quicken. The walls seemed closer than they had been that morning, the space smaller, the air thinner. She focused on the floor numbers descending, counting them like a meditation. 42, 41, 40. "The first time I got back in a car after my father died, I had a panic attack." Ethan's voice was quiet, conversational. "Pulled over on the side of the highway, couldn't breathe, convinced I was dying. My mom had to drive 2 hours to come get me." Maya looked at him, surprised by the confession. "I was 17, he continued, "and I was furious at myself for being weak, for letting fear control me. So the next day, I got back in that car and drove until the fear went away." He met her eyes. "It took 3 months, but eventually, driving was just driving again." "What's the point of that story?" Maya asked. "The point is, fear is normal, but you can't let it win." The elevator reached the 32nd floor and stopped. "This is us." The doors opened onto a different kind of space than the executive floor, more open, more collaborative, with glass-walled conference rooms and clusters of desks where people worked in animated conversation. This was where the actual work happened, Maya realized. The executive floor was for decisions. This floor was for execution. Ethan led her to a conference room at the far end of the floor where 5 people were already seated around a table covered with laptops, tablets, and coffee cups. They looked up as Ethan entered, their postures immediately straightening, conversations cutting off mid-sentence. "Morning," Ethan said, taking a seat at the head of the table. He gestured to Maya. "This is Maya Santos. She's joining our team in a new client services role. She'll be observing today." 5 pairs of eyes turned to Maya with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. She recognized the look, the same one she'd gotten from customers when she started retail jobs, the assessment of whether she was competent or just another body filling a position. Maya, this is our account team for MedTech Solutions, Ethan continued, gesturing around the table. Jennifer handles project management, David is our technical lead, Sarah manages the relationship, Marcus does data analysis, and Tom is from our legal department. Maya nodded to each of them, receiving lukewarm smiles in return. She took a seat against the wall, trying to make herself invisible while simultaneously trying to look like she belonged. The client should be here any minute, Jennifer said, glancing at her watch. She was probably in her 40s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that came from years of competence. They've indicated they want to discuss concerns about response time and personalization of service. Translation, they think we're treating them like just another account number, Sarah added. She was younger, maybe early 30s, with an edge to her voice that suggested she'd been fighting this battle for a while. I've tried to schedule more frequent check-ins, but they keep saying they want to talk to someone who actually has decision-making power, not just relationship management. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, meaning they feel like they're getting shuffled through a system instead of being heard. They're not wrong, David muttered. He was the oldest person at the table, probably late 50s, with the rumpled look of someone who cared more about code than appearance. We've been running their infrastructure on automated monitoring for 2 years. Works fine 99% of the time, but when there's an actual problem, they have to file a ticket and wait in the queue like everyone else. That's the process, Jennifer said, her tone defensive. It's efficient. It allows us to prioritize issues based on severity and impact. It also makes them feel unimportant, Sarah shot back. I've had 3 conversations with their CTO in the past month where he explicitly said they're tired of talking to systems instead of people. The dynamic in the room was becoming clear to Maya. Jennifer defended the process, the efficiency, the machine. Sarah fought for the relationship, the human element, the individual client. David and Marcus sat somewhere in the middle, focused on their technical domains. Tom from legal seemed to be there purely to prevent anyone from promising anything actionable. Here's what's going to happen, Ethan said, cutting through the brewing argument. When they arrive, we're going to listen. Actually listen. Not prepare rebuttals in our heads while they talk. Not explain why our process makes sense. Just listen to what they're saying and why they're saying it. Jennifer looked like she wanted to object, but thought better of it. There was a knock on the conference room door. A woman in her early 50s entered, followed by 2 younger men carrying laptops. The woman had gray hair cut sharp at her shoulders and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades fighting to be taken seriously in tech. Dr. Chen, Ethan stood, extending his hand. Thank you for coming in. Mr. Cole. Doctor. Chen's handshake was firm, professional, completely neutral. I appreciate you making time for this conversation. This is my CTO, James Park, and our head of operations, Marcus Lee. Introductions went around the table. When they reached Maya, Dr. Chen's eyes lingered for a moment, clearly wondering what role this young woman in the rumpled blouse played in a high-level contract negotiation. Maya is observing today as part of a new client services initiative we're implementing, Ethan explained smoothly. She's here to learn how we can better serve our clients' needs. Dr. Chen nodded, seeming to accept this, though her expression suggested she'd reserve judgment about whether this initiative was real or corporate theater. Everyone sat. There was a moment of loaded silence, the kind that happens before difficult conversations. I'll be direct, Dr. Chen began. MedTech Solutions has been a coal industries client for 3 years. In that time, we've consistently met our financial obligations, rarely complained about pricing, and generally been what I believe you'd call a model client. You have, Sarah confirmed. We value our partnership with you. And yet, Dr. Chen continued, her voice sharpening, I feel less like a partner and more like an account number. When our systems went down last month for 4 hours, in the middle of a critical data migration, we filed an emergency ticket and were told someone would respond within 2 hours per our service agreement. 2 hours, while our entire operation was frozen. We resolved the issue in 90 minutes, Jennifer said, pulling up data on her tablet. 30 minutes ahead of our contractual obligation. You did. Dr. Chen's smile was cold. But you missed the point. We didn't need you to meet your contractual obligation. We needed you to understand that 4 hours of downtime for a healthcare technology company means delayed patient care. It means doctors unable to access critical records. It means real people, real lives, affected by what you saw as just another ticket in the queue. Maya watched Ethan's face. He was utterly still, but something in his eyes suggested Dr. Chen's words were landing exactly where they needed to. When I called your emergency line, Dr. Chen continued, I spoke to 3 different people, each one asking me to re-explain the problem, each one telling me they'd escalate it to the appropriate team. No one said they understood the urgency. No one treated it like it mattered beyond checking a box on a service agreement. Dr. Chen, I want to apologize, Jennifer began. I don't want an apology. Dr. Chen cut her off. I want to know if this partnership is actually a partnership or if we're just revenue on a spreadsheet. Because if it's the latter, we can get that anywhere. Your competitor has been very persuasive about offering a more personalized approach. The silence that followed was suffocating. Maya could see Jennifer's jaw working, Sarah looking down at her hands, David studying the table like it held answers. Tom from legal had his pen poised over his notepad, ready to document whatever commitments were about to be made. Ethan leaned forward. You're right. Jennifer's head snapped up. Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. Everything you said is correct, Ethan continued. We've treated you like an account number because that's what our systems are designed to do. Categorize, prioritize, process. Efficient? Yes, but at the cost of understanding what actually matters to you. Mr. Cole, Jennifer tried to interject, probably to soften the admission, to spin it somehow. He held up a hand, silencing her. I've spent 20 years building this company to be efficient, to scale, to maximize value. And in doing so, I've created exactly what you described, a machine that works very well but doesn't actually see the people it's serving. Dr. Chen was watching him carefully now, trying to determine if this was a sales tactic or genuine acknowledgement. I can't undo 3 years in one meeting, Ethan said, but I can promise you this. Starting today, things change. You'll have direct access to decision makers. Your concerns won't go through a ticketing system. They'll go to people who understand your business and can respond immediately. And when problems happen, we'll measure our success not by how quickly we meet our contractual obligations, but by how well we understand and address the real impact on your operations. Those are significant promises, James Park, the CTO, spoke up for the first time. How do we know they're not just words designed to keep us from walking? You don't. Ethan's honesty seemed to surprise everyone. You'll have to trust that I understand what's at stake here. And if we fail to deliver, you should absolutely walk. No company deserves client loyalty if they can't earn it. Dr. Chen studied him for a long moment. What changed? 3 years of relationship management, and suddenly today you're in this meeting personally, making promises about restructuring how you serve us. Why now? Maya felt eyes shift to her for just a second before moving back to Ethan. She understood the implication. The timing of her arrival and this sudden shift in approach wasn't lost on anyone. I had a conversation this morning that made me realize my company had lost its way, Ethan said. Not financially. We're doing well by those metrics. But in terms of actually mattering to the people we serve, we've been failing. Your frustration is proof of that. And this new client services initiative? Dr. Chen nodded toward Maya. Is that part of this revelation? It is. Ethan glanced at Maya, and she felt exposed under the scrutiny of everyone in the room. We're implementing a new approach, one that prioritizes understanding client needs over processing client requests. It's going to take time to build, but the foundation starts today. Dr. Chen considered this, then turned to Maya directly. What's your background? What qualifies you to reshape client services at a company this size? The question hung in the air like a trap. Maya could feel Jennifer's smug anticipation, Sarah's sympathetic worry, Ethan's careful neutrality. They all wanted to know what she'd say, how she'd handle being put on the spot. Maya thought about lying, about inflating her retail experience into something that sounded more impressive. But Ethan had asked for truth, and if she couldn't be honest now, she had no business being in this room. I don't have a background in corporate client services, she said clearly. Until this morning, I was working retail and barely making rent. I have no business degree, no management training, no credentials that would normally qualify me for this position. She saw Dr. Chen's expression hardened, saw Jennifer's barely suppressed satisfaction. What I do have, Maya continued, is 3 years of experience being on the other side of systems like the ones you're describing. I know what it feels like to be a ticket in a queue, to be filtered out by algorithms, to have your actual needs ignored because they don't fit neatly into predefined categories. She met Dr. Chen's eyes. Your frustration about being treated like an account number instead of a partner? I understand that frustration intimately, because I've spent years being treated like I'm replaceable when I know I'm not. The room was absolutely silent. Dr. Chen's expression was unreadable. So no, Maya said, I can't tell you I'm qualified by traditional standards, but I can tell you that if this company is serious about changing how it sees its clients, having someone who remembers what it's like to be invisible might actually be valuable. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Dr. Chen did something unexpected. She smiled, not the cold professional smile from earlier, but something genuine. I like her, she said to Ethan. She's honest. That's rare. The tension in the room shifted, though it didn't disappear entirely. James and Marcus were still skeptical. Jennifer was clearly unhappy, but Sarah looked almost relieved. Can we discuss specifics? Dr. Chen pulled out a folder. Because if we're rebuilding this partnership, I have some thoughts about what that needs to look like. The meeting lasted another 90 minutes. Maya watched as Dr. Chen systematically dismantled 3 years of relationship management, pointing out every instance where process had trumped understanding, where efficiency had cost them trust. Sarah took notes furiously, occasionally interjecting with suggestions. David offered technical solutions that Dr. Chen's team either accepted or refined. Jennifer grew increasingly quiet as her carefully constructed systems were revealed to be inadequate. Ethan listened more than he spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting Dr. Chen define what she needed. Maya noticed how different this was from what she'd expected. Instead of defending or selling, he was simply absorbing information, acknowledging failures, committing to changes. By the end, they had the framework of a new service agreement, direct access to a dedicated team, quarterly business reviews with actual decision-makers, immediate escalation protocols for critical issues, all the things that should have existed from the beginning but had been optimized away in favor of efficiency. We'll draft formal amendments to the contract and send them by end of week, Tom from legal said, finally earning his presence in the room. Is there anything else you need from us today? Dr. Chen stood, gathering her materials. Just this. Follow through. Don't let this conversation be the high point of our relationship. Make the changes you promised, and prove that today wasn't just good theater to keep us from leaving. We will, Ethan said, standing to shake her hand. You have my word. After the MedTech team left, the conference room felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken tension. Jennifer was the first to speak, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Did we just agree to completely restructure how we service their account? Because that's going to require significant resource reallocation, and I'm not sure we have the bandwidth. We'll find the bandwidth. Ethan's tone left no room for argument. Dr. Chen was right. We've been treating clients like revenue streams instead of partnerships. That changes now. With all due respect, Jennifer said, in the tone people use when they mean no respect at all. We have 200 enterprise clients. If we give each of them the kind of personalized attention Dr. Chen is demanding, we'll need to triple our account management team. The economics don't work. Then we prioritize. Sarah jumped in, energized in a way Maya hadn't seen during the meeting. We identify clients where relationships are strained, where we're at risk of losing them, and we focus there first. Prove we can do this differently, then scale it. Or, Jennifer countered, we accept that not every client needs or deserves that level of attention. Some relationships are transactional, and that's fine. Trying to be everything to everyone is how companies lose focus. Trying to be nothing to anyone is how companies lose their soul. The words came out of Maya's mouth before she could stop them. Everyone turned to look at her. Jennifer's expression was arctic. I'm sorry, Maya said, though she wasn't. I shouldn't have— No, Ethan interrupted. Say what you were going to say. Maya took a breath, feeling the weight of 5 sets of eyes on her. You're both right. You can't give every client the same level of personalized attention, and not every relationship needs it. But the problem isn't just about resource allocation. It's about the message you're sending. What message? Jennifer's voice was sharp with challenge. That clients matter until it's inconvenient for them to matter. Maya stood, surprising herself with the boldness. Dr. Chen didn't just want better service. She wanted to know if anyone here actually cared about her company's mission, about the patients affected when systems go down, about the real-world impact of your efficiency. She moved to the whiteboard on the conference room wall, grabbing a marker. You're thinking about this as a resource problem. How many account managers per client, how many hours of attention, how to scale personalization. But what if the problem isn't resources? What if it's that your systems don't allow for the kind of flexibility that makes clients feel seen? Maya started drawing on the board, rough boxes and arrows, the kind of diagram someone with no formal training would make. Right now you have clients here. She drew a box. And you have your ticketing system here. Another box. And when something goes wrong, the client has to interact with the system, which categorizes and routes their problem. The system is the mediator. The system decides what's urgent, what matters, how quickly to respond. She drew more arrows. But what if instead of clients interfacing with systems, they interfaced with people who had the authority to access whatever systems were needed? What if the question wasn't, what does our process say about this problem, but what does this specific client need right now? David leaned forward, studying her diagram. You're describing relationship-based service delivery instead of process-based. That's what account management is supposed to be. But it's not what it actually is, Maya said. Because your account managers, no offense, Sarah, don't have real authority. They can't make decisions. They can't bypass the queue when something is genuinely urgent. They're essentially customer service representatives with better titles. Sarah didn't look offended. She looked vindicated. I've been saying this for 2 years. And it's not practical, Jennifer insisted. You can't have every account manager making independent decisions about what's urgent and what's not. That's chaos. That's how you end up with inconsistent service and blown budgets. Unless you hire account managers you actually trust, Maya said, unless you build a culture where understanding the client's business is valued more than following process, unless you measure success by client satisfaction instead of ticket resolution time. Ethan was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Keep going. Maya felt her confidence growing, fed by the recognition that the ideas forming in her head were actually coherent. You said you have 200 enterprise clients. How many of them are actually at risk of leaving? Based on recent satisfaction surveys, probably 20 to 30, Sarah said. MedTech was one of them. Okay, start there. 20 to 30 clients get a different kind of service. Dedicated teams with real authority, proactive communication, customized solutions instead of standardized packages. You prove it works, show measurable improvement in satisfaction and retention, then you scale it to the next tier. And the clients who aren't at risk? Jennifer asked. We just ignore them? No. You serve them well with your existing systems because those systems work fine for clients who aren't having problems. But you also watch for warning signs. You don't wait for satisfaction scores to drop. You stay ahead of the curve. Maya set down the marker. The goal isn't to rebuild everything overnight. It's to prove that a different approach is possible and valuable. Marcus, who'd been silent through most of the discussion, spoke up. The data could support this. If we track retention rates, client lifetime value, referral rates for the high-touch group versus the standard service group, we'd have concrete evidence of ROI within 6 months. And if the ROI is negative, Jennifer pressed, if it turns out that personalized service costs more than it generates in retained revenue, then we'll have learned something important, Ethan said. But I don't think that's what we'll find. I think we'll discover that we've been leaving money on the table by treating relationships as transactional. Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue further, but recognized she was outnumbered. I'll need to restructure my team's workload if we're doing this. Do it, Ethan said. Work with Sarah to identify the at-risk clients and build the pilot program. I want a proposal on my desk by Friday. The meeting broke up, people gathering their materials and filing out with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Sarah approached Maya with a smile that was equal parts grateful and conspiratorial. Thank you, she said quietly. I've been fighting this battle alone for so long. It's good to have reinforcements. I just said what seemed obvious, Maya said. That's exactly why it needed to be said. Sarah glanced toward the door where Jennifer had exited. She's not a bad person. She's just been rewarded for efficiency for so long that she's forgotten why the efficiency matters in the first place. After Sarah left, it was just Maya and Ethan in the conference room. He was studying her whiteboard diagram, his expression thoughtful. "Where did that come from?" he asked. "The analysis, the framework, all of it?" Maya shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I don't know. I don't. I was watching the meeting, listening to everyone talk about resources and process, and all I could think was that they were solving the wrong problem. So I just said what I was thinking. That's what I hired you to do." Ethan turned to face her. "Though I'll admit, I didn't expect you to do it quite so effectively on your first day." "Did I overstep?" Maya asked. "With Jennifer? With the whole thing? Because I know I'm new, and I don't actually understand how things work here yet, and you were perfect." He said it with certainty. "You saw something everyone else had been too close to see. That's valuable. Don't apologize for it." Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, seeing 3 texts from her roommate and 2 from her brother. Reality crashed back. She had a life outside this building, responsibilities that didn't care about client service frameworks or corporate restructuring. "I need to call my brother," she said. "He gets out of school in an hour, and I usually check in to make sure he's doing his homework before I get home from work. Except I'm not going home from work at my normal time because this isn't my normal work. And I need to figure out—" She stopped, realizing she was spiraling. Ethan checked his watch. "It's nearly 2. Have you eaten lunch?" Maya hadn't even thought about lunch. "No." "Neither have I. There's a cafe on the ground floor. We can get food, you can call your brother, and we can debrief the meeting." He was already heading for the door. "Come on." The cafe was surprisingly normal. Less corporate cafeteria, more actual restaurant, with natural light and the smell of real food instead of industrial warming trays. They got sandwiches and coffee and found a table near the window, away from the clusters of employees on their lunch breaks. Maya called her brother first, stepping away from the table to talk to him. Miguel answered on the second ring, his voice carrying that particular 14-year-old mix of annoyance and affection. "You're late checking in," he said instead of hello. "I know, I'm sorry. Something came up with work." She paused. "Actually, I got a new job. Today. It's complicated." A good complicated or a bad complicated? Miguel knew her well enough to hear the uncertainty in her voice. "I don't know yet." Maya watched through the window as Ethan sat at their table, checking his phone, looking like any other person having lunch instead of a billionaire CEO who'd upended his day for her. But it pays more. A lot more. Which means things are going to get easier. Does this mean I can get new shoes? Miguel's excitement was immediate and heartbreaking. His current shoes were too small, had been for months, but they'd been stretching the budget with other necessities. "Yes," Maya said, feeling tears prick her eyes. "New shoes, new anything you need." They talked for a few more minutes, Miguel updating her on his science project, asking if she'd remember to buy milk on the way home, being a normal teenager with normal concerns. When they hung up, Maya felt the distance between her old life and this new one stretching wider. She returned to the table where Ethan had already started eating his sandwich. He looked up as she sat. "Everything okay?" "Fine. He just needed to know I didn't forget he existed." Maya picked at her own sandwich. "This is weird." "What is?" "This. All of it." She gestured around the cafe, at the building, at the impossible situation she'd found herself in. "This morning I was worried about being late to an interview for an entry-level job I probably wouldn't get. Now I'm having lunch with you and apparently redesigning client service delivery for a company I don't even understand yet." "And that feels wrong?" Ethan asked. "It feels too fast, like I skipped all the steps between desperate and functional." Maya finally took a bite of her sandwich, realized she was starving, and forced herself to slow down. "In my experience, nothing good happens this quickly. Usually fast changes are bad changes, crisis changes." "Is that what your life has taught you?" Maya considered the question. "Every major change in my life has been forced by catastrophe. My parents dying, dropping out of school, losing jobs, moving to cheaper apartments. It's always been reaction, never choice. So when something good happens this fast, I don't trust it." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his coffee cup held between both hands. My father used to say that opportunity looks different when you're not expecting it, that most people miss their chances because they're waiting for them to look like what they imagined. You think this is my chance? Maya asked. I think this is both of our chances, Ethan said. Mine to fix what I've broken. Yours to prove that the systems that filtered you out were wrong. He set down his coffee. But only if you want it. If this feels wrong, if you'd rather take the administrative assistant job you originally applied for, I'll understand. No judgment. Maya thought about it, really thought about it. The safe choice was the original job. Predictable, modest, achievable. This new position was none of those things. It was risky and uncertain and probably destined to fail in spectacular fashion when everyone realized she had no idea what she was doing. But it was also the first time in 3 years that someone had looked at her and seen potential instead of limitations. I want it, she said, even though it terrifies me. Maybe because it terrifies me. Ethan smiled, genuine, warm, so different from his corporate face. Good, because I have about 40 more meetings this week where you'll get to be terrified in front of important people. That's your idea of encouragement? That's my idea of honesty. He pulled out his phone, swiping through his calendar. Tomorrow we have the executive leadership team meeting. You'll meet the department heads, see how strategic decisions get made. Wednesday is quarterly budget review. Thursday we have 3 different client calls. Friday is the board meeting. Maya felt panic rising in her chest. The board meeting? Don't those people decide if you keep your job? Technically, yes. Though realistically, I'd have to do something catastrophically stupid to get fired. He paused. Bringing an employee with 0 corporate experience to a board meeting might qualify. Then why would you do it? Because I'm about to propose significant changes to how we operate, and I want them to see the reason why. I want them to meet you, hear you speak, understand that this isn't some abstract initiative, but a concrete response to a real problem. The weight of that responsibility settled over Maya like a physical force. The board of directors. The people who controlled billions of dollars, who decided the fate of thousands of employees. And Ethan wanted her to be the face of institutional change. I'm going to fail, she said quietly. You know that, right? I'm going to walk into one of these meetings and say something stupid or wrong or completely reveal that I don't belong there, and it's going to reflect badly on you, and this whole experiment is going to collapse. Probably, Ethan agreed, surprising her. You'll make mistakes. Say things that don't land right, misread situations. That's guaranteed. So why? Because making mistakes while trying something different is better than perfectly executing the wrong approach. He leaned forward. Every person in this company is capable of being right within the systems we've built. They know the process, understand the rules, execute efficiently, but none of them can see what's wrong with those systems because they're invested in them working. He pointed at her. You're not invested. You have no loyalty to the way things are because the way things are failed you. That outside perspective, even when it's messy and uncertain, is more valuable than perfect execution of a flawed system. Maya wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that her inexperience was an asset rather than a liability, but years of rejection had taught her to be skeptical of reassurance. What if I'm not special, she asked. What if I'm just ordinary and this morning in the elevator you projected something onto me that isn't actually there? Ethan finished his sandwich, took a long drink of coffee, and seemed to be choosing his words carefully. When Sophie was 5, she brought home a drawing from school, just crayon scribbles, the kind of thing every kid makes. My ex-wife smiled and put it on the fridge and forgot about it. But I looked at that drawing, really looked at it, and I saw something. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, and showed Maya the screen. It was indeed a child's drawing. Rough, unrefined, but there was something about the composition, the way colors were balanced, that suggested an artistic eye. I asked her what it was supposed to be, Ethan continued. She said it was how she felt when she was happy. Not what made her happy, but how the feeling looked. That kind of abstract thinking from a 5-year-old struck me as remarkable. He put his phone away. So I got her art supplies, enrolled her in classes, encouraged her to keep drawing, and everyone told me I was projecting, seeing genius where there was just normal child development. But I kept encouraging her anyway, because even if I was wrong, what was the harm in telling my daughter that her perspective mattered? What does this have to do with me? Maya asked. This morning you looked at my company and saw through all the polish to the emptiness underneath. You articulated problems that my entire executive team has been dancing around for years. You walked into a client meeting and immediately grasped dynamics that took other people months to understand. Ethan met her eyes. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe you're just ordinary, and I'm seeing something that isn't there. But even if I am, what's the harm in giving you the chance to prove yourself? Maya didn't have an answer to that. The harm, of course, was in the hope. In believing she could be more than she'd been told she was, only to discover the limitations were real, after all. But maybe that was a risk worth taking. They finished lunch in more comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who've shared something significant, even if they can't quite name what it is. When they stood to leave, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, softening in a way Maya had only seen once before. "I need to take this," he said. "It's Sophie's school." He answered, and Maya watched his face cycle through concern, frustration, and resignation in the space of 30 seconds. "I understand," he said into the phone. "Yes, I can be there. 45 minutes. He ended the call and closed his eyes briefly. "Sophie got into a fight. They want me to come get her." A fight? Maya couldn't imagine the sweet 7-year-old from the photo fighting anyone. Another kid said something about her mom leaving. Sophie pushed her. Ethan was already moving toward the elevator. "I have to go. Can you find your way back to my office? Miranda, my assistant, can set you up at a desk, get you started on background reading about our clients." "Go," Maya said. "Family first." He paused, looking at her with something like gratitude. "I'll be back before end of day. We'll regroup then." Maya watched him leave, moving with the same purposeful stride, but somehow diminished by worry. For all his power and control, he was still just a father trying to figure out how to help his daughter. She made her way back to the 43rd floor, where Miranda, a woman in her 30s with the efficient warmth of someone who'd been managing executives for years, was waiting with a sympathetic smile. "Mr. Cole messaged me," Miranda said. "Family emergency. Let's get you set up." The desk Miranda led her to was in a small office near Ethan's, with a window overlooking the city and equipment that was probably worth more than everything Maya owned. There was already a computer logged in under her name, a stack of folders containing client profiles, and a notebook with her employee ID printed on the cover. "I've pulled together background on our top 20 clients," Miranda explained. "Start there. Understand their businesses, their histories with us, any recent concerns. Mr. Cole will want to discuss them when he returns." After Miranda left, Maya sat in her new chair, in her new office, staring at the stack of folders that represented her new job. She opened the first one, a manufacturing company in the Midwest, annual revenue in the hundreds of millions, coal industries client for 5 years. The file contained contracts, service reports, satisfaction surveys, correspondence. Maya started reading, making notes, trying to understand not just what services were provided, but why the client had chosen coal industries in the first place. What had they been looking for? What problems were they trying to solve? Were those problems actually solved or just managed? Hours passed. The sun shifted across the sky, throwing long shadows across her desk. Maya worked through folder after folder, building a mental map of client relationships, seeing patterns emerge. Companies stayed with coal industries because the service was reliable and the systems worked, but they didn't stay because they felt valued or understood. It was a relationship built on competence, not connection. She was deep into the 15th folder when her office door opened. Ethan stood there, looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with work. "How's Sophie?" Maya asked. "Suspended for 2 days. We had a long talk about appropriate responses to hurtful comments." He moved into the office, slumping into the chair across from her desk. She asked why her mom left, why some kids have moms who stay and she doesn't, and I had no good answer except that sometimes people make choices we can't understand. That must have been hard. The hardest conversation I've had in months, harder than any board meeting or negotiation. He rubbed his face. "Mrs. Patterson said she can watch her tomorrow and Friday, but I'll need to work from home as much as possible." But Maya heard herself say, I could help. With Sophie, I mean. If you need backup." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "You have your own brother to take care of." "Miguel's 14. He's self-sufficient after school. Sophie's 7 and dealing with trauma. Maya closed the folder she'd been reading. I spent years figuring out how to be a parent when I wasn't ready. Maybe that experience could be useful. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. She meant it. Somewhere in the past 12 hours, this had stopped being just about a job. It had become about two people trying to rebuild things they hadn't known were broken. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he finally said. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence, two people at the end of an impossible day, both changed in ways they were still trying to understand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the executive team meeting, the skepticism and resistance, the inevitable moment when Maya would reveal her limitations. But tonight, in this quiet office with the city lights beginning to glow outside, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they'd both found something worth fighting for. The following morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Maya woke at 5:30 out of habit, her body not yet adjusted to the fact that her life had fundamentally changed. She made Miguel breakfast in their cramped kitchen, listening to him talk about a history test while her mind was already at Coal Industries, already preparing for the executive leadership meeting that would either validate Ethan's faith in her or expose her as exactly what she feared she was, a fraud. You're nervous, Miguel observed, pouring himself orange juice. Like, more nervous than usual. That obvious? Maya forced a smile. You've checked your phone 6 times in 10 minutes and you burned the eggs. He gestured at the pan where breakfast had indeed gone from scrambled to scorched. What's happening at the new job? Maya scraped the ruined eggs into the trash and started over. Big meeting, important people. I have to not mess up. You won't. Miguel said it with the absolute certainty of someone who'd spent 3 years watching his sister refuse to break. You never do. If only that were true. Maya thought about all the times she had messed up, lost jobs, missed opportunities, made the wrong call. The difference was, those failures had only affected her and Miguel. This one would affect Ethan, the company, everyone who'd been dragged into this experiment. She got to Coal Industries at 7:15, earlier than necessary, needing time to prepare. The building felt different in the early morning, quieter, less frenetic, populated by the kind of people who arrived before they had to because ambition wouldn't let them sleep in. Maya rode the elevator to 43, her stomach tight with anticipation, and found Miranda already at her desk despite the early hour. Coffee's fresh, Miranda said without looking up from her computer. Mister, Cole is already in his office. He asked that you join him when you arrived. Maya poured herself coffee she didn't want and knocked on Ethan's door. He was standing at his window, phone to his ear, but he waved her in. She caught the tail end of his conversation. I understand the concern, Richard, but the decision is made. We're moving forward. A pause. Then they'll have to adjust. I'll see you at 9. He ended the call and turned to Maya. He looked tired, not just physically, though there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. It was a deeper exhaustion, the kind that came from carrying too much for too long. How's Sophie? Maya asked. Subdued, guilty, we watched movies until she fell asleep around 10, then she had nightmares and ended up in my bed. He moved to his desk, sorting through papers that already looked organized. Mrs. Patterson picked her up this morning. She's not happy about the suspension, but she understands why it happened. 7-year-olds shouldn't have to understand that much about pain, Maya said quietly. No, they shouldn't. Ethan set down the papers. But that's the world we live in. We do the best we can with the damage we inherit. The statement hung between them. True for Sophie, true for Miguel, true for everyone trying to build something good from broken foundations. Are you ready for this morning? Ethan asked, shifting to business mode with visible effort. No. Maya saw no point in lying. I'm terrified and completely unprepared and probably going to say something that makes everyone in that room wonder why you hired me. Good. Good? If you weren't nervous, I'd be worried. Confidence without competence is dangerous. He handed her a folder. Here's what you need to know. The executive leadership team meets every Tuesday at 9. 8 people. Heads of finance, operations, technology, legal, HR, marketing, business development, and client services. They've all been with the company for at least 5 years, most longer. Maya opened the folder to find professional headshots and brief bios. She recognized Jennifer from yesterday's meeting, VP of Client Services. With the company for 12 years, MBA from a school Maya had never heard of, but assumed was prestigious. The others were similarly credentialed, similarly established. "They're going to hate me," Maya said. "Some of them, yes." Ethan didn't sugarcoat it. "Jennifer especially. You contradicted her approach yesterday, and worse, you were right. That's not something people in her position forgive easily. So why bring me into this meeting at all? Why not give me time to actually learn something before throwing me to the wolves? Because waiting implies you need their approval." Ethan moved around his desk to stand beside her, looking at the bios over her shoulder. "If I introduce you in a month after you've proven yourself, they'll accept you grudgingly. If I introduce you today when you're still raw and uncertain and make it clear that your perspective matters despite your lack of credentials, it sends a different message." "What message?" "That I'm serious about changing how this company operates. That traditional qualifications aren't the only metric of value. That I trust you enough to give you authority before you've earned it by their standards." He paused. "It's a risk, for both of us." Maya studied the faces in the folder. Successful, established people who'd built careers on knowing the rules and playing them well. She was about to walk into their territory and implicitly suggest that everything they'd done might be insufficient. "What do you need me to do in this meeting?" she asked. "Listen, observe. Speak only if you have something worth saying." Ethan moved back to his desk. "I'm going to announce the Client Services Pilot Program, the initiative we discussed with MedTech yesterday. There will be resistance. Jennifer will argue it's not scalable. Finance will worry about costs. Operations will say it disrupts established workflows. Let them. Don't defend the program unless I specifically ask for your input. Then why do I need to be there? Because I want them to see your face when they're arguing against change. I want them to understand that this isn't abstract corporate strategy. It's about real people who've been failed by our systems. You're the embodiment of that failure and the potential for something better." The weight of that symbolism settled over Maya like a physical burden. She wasn't just herself anymore. She was a representation, a message, a walking challenge to everything these people had built their careers on. "No pressure," she muttered. Ethan almost smiled. "You'll be fine. Just remember, you've already survived worse than a conference room full of skeptical executives." At 8:55, they made their way to the executive conference room, larger than the one from yesterday, with a table that could seat 20 and windows offering a view that probably cost extra in the building lease. 6 people were already seated, engaged in the kind of pre-meeting small talk that served no purpose except filling silence. They looked up as Ethan entered, their expressions shifting to professional attention. Jennifer was there, her posture perfect, her smile not quite reaching her eyes when she saw Maya following Ethan. The others, faces from the folder, names Maya had tried to memorize, registered Maya's presence with varying degrees of curiosity and confusion. "Morning, everyone." Ethan took his seat at the head of the table. "Before we begin, I want to introduce Maya Santos. She's joining our team in a new client services capacity. Maya will be attending leadership meetings going forward as part of her onboarding and to provide input on the initiatives we'll be discussing." Maya took the empty seat beside Ethan, acutely aware of the scrutiny. She could feel the questions in the room. Who was she? Why was she here? What possible value could someone so obviously junior bring to an executive meeting? "Maya, welcome." The man across from her extended his hand. Robert Chen, CFO, according to the folder, early 50s with the precise manner of someone who dealt in numbers and certainties. "What's your background?" The question was polite on the surface, but Maya heard the real inquiry. "What makes you qualified to be here?" "I started yesterday," Maya said, shaking his hand. "Before that, I was in retail. Before that, I was a college dropout taking care of my younger brother. I have no corporate experience and no credentials that would traditionally qualify me for this position." The silence that followed was profound. Robert's eyebrows rose. Jennifer's expression flickered with something that might have been vindication or pity. The others exchanged glances that ranged from bemused to concerned. "That's honest," said a woman at the far end of the table, Patricia Liu, VP of HR, who probably had very strong opinions about hiring practices that bypassed every standard protocol. Honesty is part of why she's here, Ethan said calmly. Maya has a perspective that none of us in this room can offer. She's been on the receiving end of our systems. She's applied to this company multiple times and been rejected by our automated screening. She understands what it's like to be invisible to the processes we've built. And that qualifies her to influence company strategy? This from David Park, head of operations, his skepticism unconcealed. I mean, no disrespect, but we're talking about decisions that affect thousands of employees and hundreds of millions in revenue. Perspective is valuable, but so is expertise. Agreed, Ethan said. Which is why we're all here. Maya isn't replacing anyone or overriding anyone's expertise. She's adding a dimension we've been missing. Jennifer leaned forward. Ethan, can we speak candidly? Always. This feels reactive. Yesterday's meeting with MedTech clearly shook you. And now suddenly we're restructuring client services and bringing in someone with zero experience to influence that restructuring. Her tone was measured, professional, but Maya could hear the steel underneath. I'm concerned we're making emotional decisions rather than strategic ones. That's a fair concern, Ethan acknowledged. And you're right that yesterday's meeting influenced my thinking. Dr. Chen articulated failures in our approach that I've been seeing for months but couldn't quite name. Maya helped me understand why those failures exist and how we might address them. In one conversation, Jennifer said, one meeting where she drew some diagrams on a whiteboard and suggested we personalize service delivery, which, for the record, is what client services has been trying to do within the constraints we're given. What constraints? Maya heard herself ask before she could stop. Jennifer turned to her, and Maya saw the full force of 12 years of corporate experience in that gaze. Budget constraints, bandwidth constraints, the reality that we have 200 enterprise clients and finite resources. We can't give everyone white-glove treatment. I'm not suggesting you do, Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm suggesting that your current approach treats all clients the same, with efficient, scalable systems that work well for companies who don't need much attention. But for clients who are struggling or considering leaving, those same systems make them feel abandoned. Ooh, we have account managers for that, Jennifer countered. Sarah and her team are supposed to handle relationship management. But they don't have authority, Maya pressed. They can't bypass queues or make exceptions or actually solve problems in real time. They're just better-dressed versions of customer service representatives. And clients can tell the difference between someone who can help them and someone who's just documenting their complaints for someone else to handle. The room had gone very quiet. Maya realized she'd just criticized the entire client services structure in front of its architect. She waited for Jennifer to eviscerate her, to point out that a woman who'd been employed for less than 24 hours had no business critiquing systems she didn't understand. Instead, it was Sarah who spoke. Sarah, who'd been in yesterday's meeting, who'd sat in on this entire conversation with an expression that kept shifting between hope and resignation. She's right. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. I've been trying to advocate for clients for 2 years, and every time I push for an exception or special treatment, I'm told it doesn't scale. That we need to follow process, that consistency matters more than individual relationships. Because it does, David from operations interjected. You can't run a company this size on exceptions. You need standardized procedures, reliable systems, predictable outcomes. Except our outcomes aren't predictable anymore, Robert, the CFO, said, pulling up something on his tablet. Client retention has dropped 3% over the past 18 months. That might not sound like much, but it represents approximately $15 million in annual recurring revenue that we've lost to competitors. Jennifer's jaw tightened. Client retention is affected by multiple factors: pricing, product quality, market conditions. You can't attribute it solely to service delivery. No, but I can show you exit interview data. Robert swiped through screens. 72% of clients who left in the past year cited impersonal service or lack of responsiveness as contributing factors. Only 18% mentioned price. The number hit like a physical blow. Maya saw it register across the faces in the room, the recognition that something was fundamentally broken, even if no one wanted to admit it. So what are you proposing? Patricia from HR asked, directing the question at Ethan. Complete overhaul of client services, because that would require significant hiring, training, restructuring. We're talking months of disruption. Not complete overhaul, a pilot program. Ethan pulled up a presentation on the screen at the front of the room. We identify our 20 highest risk clients, the ones most likely to leave based on satisfaction scores and contract renewal timelines. For those clients, we create dedicated teams with real authority, direct access to decision makers, proactive communication, customized solutions instead of standardized packages. We run it for 6 months and measure results. And if it fails, Jennifer asked, then we'll have learned that personalization doesn't justify the cost, and we'll return to our current model with better data about what clients actually need. Ethan advanced to the next slide. But I don't think it will fail. I think we'll find that investing in relationships pays for itself in retention and expansion revenue. Who leads this pilot? David asked. Because if we're pulling Sarah and her team to focus on 20 clients, who handles the other 180? The current systems continue to serve existing clients, Ethan said. We're not dismantling anything. We're building something new alongside it to see which approach generates better outcomes. And Maya's role in this? Patricia's gaze shifted to Maya, not hostile, but intensely evaluative. What specifically will she be doing? Maya felt every eye turn to her. This was the moment. She could defer to Ethan, let him explain, hide behind his authority, or she could own whatever this position was becoming. I'll be working with the dedicated teams, Maya said, forcing her voice to stay level. Sitting in on client meetings, understanding their businesses and challenges, identifying gaps between what we're providing and what they actually need. Then translating that back to internal teams so we can adapt our approach. That's relationship management, Jennifer said. That's Sarah's job. It's different from relationship management, Sarah interjected, and Maya felt a flash of gratitude for the support. Relationship managers maintain connections. What Maya's describing is more like organizational translation, understanding the client's world well enough to help our company speak their language. That's a very generous interpretation of a position we just invented yesterday, Jennifer said, her frustration finally breaking through her professional veneer. Ethan, I need to be direct. This feels like you're undermining my department based on one bad client meeting and the influence of someone who's been here for a day. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and dangerous. Maya saw Ethan's expression harden, saw him preparing to defend his decision, and knew that if he did, if he overrode Jennifer's concerns through sheer authority, it would only deepen the resentment. You're right, Maya said, surprising herself and apparently everyone else in the room. This is reactive. It is based on one meeting, and I am completely unqualified by any traditional measure. Jennifer looked momentarily thrown by the agreement. But being right about the process doesn't mean you're right about the outcome, Maya continued. Yes, Ethan made this decision quickly, but quick decisions aren't automatically wrong. Sometimes they're just honest responses to problems that have been ignored for too long. She stood, moving to the whiteboard, the same impulse that had driven her yesterday, the need to make abstract concepts concrete. Your client services model is built on efficiency. It's designed to handle high volume with limited resources. That's smart. That works. Until it doesn't. She drew a simple diagram, the same boxes and arrows from yesterday, refined by a night of thinking. Right now, when a client has a problem, they enter your system here. She marked a box. The system routes them based on predefined categories: urgent versus routine, technical versus operational. The routing is automatic, efficient, consistent. Exactly as it should be, Jennifer said. For most clients, yes, Maya agreed. But for clients who are already frustrated, who are already considering leaving, getting routed through a system feels like being dismissed. It confirms their belief that they don't matter to you as individuals. She drew another diagram beside the first. What if high-risk clients bypassed the routing system entirely? What if they had a direct contact, a real person with decision-making authority, who could assess their needs immediately and mobilize whatever resources were required? Not because it's more efficient, but because it sends a message. You matter enough for us to treat you differently. That's favoritism, David said. Other clients will notice and demand the same treatment. Good, Maya said. Let them demand it. Then you have a conversation about what level of service justifies what level of investment. Maybe some clients are willing to pay more for premium support. Maybe others are fine with standard service because it meets their needs. But right now, you're not even offering the choice. Robert was making notes on his tablet, his expression thoughtful. There's a business model here, tiered service levels with corresponding pricing. We could potentially increase revenue while improving satisfaction. We'd need to model the costs, Patricia said. Additional headcount, training, tools. But theoretically, if we could charge a premium for high-touch service, Maya watched the conversation shift, saw the executives beginning to engage with the idea rather than resist it. She caught Ethan's eye and saw something that might have been approval. I want to see projections by Friday, Ethan said. Robert, work with Jennifer to model costs and potential revenue for different service tier scenarios. Patricia, outline what hiring and training would look like. David, identify operational dependencies and constraints. Everyone clear? Heads nodded around the table. The resistance hadn't vanished. Jennifer's expression was still guarded. David still looked skeptical. But the outright hostility had softened into professional engagement. The meeting continued for another 90 minutes, covering budget reviews, technology updates, market analysis. Maya listened more than she spoke, gradually understanding the rhythms of executive decision-making. It wasn't that different from retail management meetings, she realized. The same tensions between idealism and pragmatism, the same need to balance competing priorities, the same personalities clashing over territory and credit. When the meeting finally ended, people filed out with the kind of relieved exhaustion that comes from surviving difficult conversations. Jennifer paused at the door, looking back at Maya with an expression that was impossible to read. That was well done, she said quietly. I still think this whole initiative is risky and potentially misguided, but you handled yourself better than I expected. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't condemnation either. Maya accepted it with a nod, understanding that in corporate politics, qualified acknowledgement was sometimes the best you could hope for. After everyone left, Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, looking drained. That went better than I anticipated. Really? Because I thought Jennifer was going to stab me with her pen about halfway through. Jennifer is protective of her domain, but she's also smart enough to recognize a good idea, even when it challenges her approach. He moved to the window, that familiar gesture of seeking distance to think. You did well. The way you acknowledged her concerns before countering them, that was strategic. That was survival instinct, Maya corrected. I grew up learning how to disagree with people without making them hate me. Useful skill when you're constantly dealing with landlords, social workers, school administrators. Well, it translates surprisingly well to corporate leadership. Ethan checked his phone, frowned at whatever he saw. I need to make some calls. Can you work with Sarah this afternoon? Start identifying which clients should be part of the pilot program? Sure. Maya gathered her notes. Ethan? He looked up. Thank you for defending this, for not throwing me under the bus when Jennifer challenged the decision. I didn't defend it because of you, he said. I defended it because it's right. You just happened to be the catalyst that made me see it. Maya left him to his calls and found Sarah waiting in the hallway, looking cautiously optimistic. Can we talk? Sarah asked. Somewhere private? They found an empty conference room, smaller and less intimidating than the executive space. Sarah closed the door and turned to Maya with an intensity that suggested she'd been holding something back. I need you to understand what you're walking into, Sarah said. This pilot program, this initiative, it's going to make enemies. Jennifer isn't the only one who's threatened by change. You're challenging systems that people have built careers on. That's dangerous. I know. Do you? Sarah leaned against the table. I've been trying to improve client services for 2 years. Know what happened? My performance reviews started including notes about resistance to established processes and difficulty adapting to organizational standards. I got passed over for promotion twice. The message was clear. Stay in your lane or face consequences. Maya felt a chill of recognition. And you think that's going to happen to me? I think it's already starting. Jennifer's comment about you being unqualified, that's going to become the narrative. The girl who got hired because the CEO had a momentary crisis of conscience. The diversity hire who doesn't actually understand business. Sarah's expression was sympathetic but firm. You need to be prepared for that. How do I prepare for people deciding I don't belong? By proving them wrong, consistently, undeniably. Sarah pulled out her laptop. Which is why I want to help you succeed. Not just because I believe in what we're trying to do, but because if you fail, it validates everyone who said this was a mistake. And then we're back to business as usual. They spent the next 3 hours going through client files, identifying patterns in dissatisfaction, building profiles of relationships at risk. Sarah had been documenting problems for years, complaints that never made it into official reports, frustrations that clients mentioned in passing, the slow erosion of trust that happened when efficiency replaced empathy. Look at this one, Sarah pulled up a file. Garrison Manufacturing. They've been with us for 7 years. Contract is up for renewal in 4 months. Their satisfaction scores have been dropping steadily for 18 months. Maya read through the notes. They keep filing tickets about slow response times, but the tickets get marked as resolved within SLA standards. Exactly. We're meeting our contractual obligations, but we're missing what they're actually saying. Sarah scrolled through email exchanges. See this thread? Their operations director is asking for help optimizing their supply chain integration. Our technical team sends back documentation links and closes the ticket. The director follows up 3 more times, gets the same response, eventually stops asking. Because we solved the wrong problem, Maya said, understanding dawning. They didn't want documentation. They wanted someone to understand their supply chain challenge and help them think through solutions. But that's consulting, not support, and consulting costs extra. Sarah's frustration was evident. So instead of keeping a 7-year client happy with 30 minutes of collaborative problem solving, we stuck to our service boundaries and probably lost a $100,000 contract. Maya made notes, seeing similar patterns across multiple files. Clients asking for help in ways that didn't fit predefined service categories. Support teams responding to the literal request instead of the underlying need. Relationships slowly deteriorating because efficiency metrics didn't measure understanding. By the time they finished, Maya had a list of 15 clients who fit the pilot program criteria. Significant contracts up for renewal, declining satisfaction, documented frustrations with service delivery. Each one represented a relationship on the edge of breaking. These are our test cases, Maya said, reviewing the list. If we can turn around even half of them, we prove the model works. And if we can't, Sarah asked, then we learn why and adjust the approach. Maya closed her laptop. But failure isn't walking away. Failure is deciding the problem is unsolvable and giving up. Sarah smiled, something genuine and relieved. I think I'm going to like working with you. The rest of the day blurred by. More reading, more conversations, more desperate attempts to absorb 3 years of corporate knowledge in 3 hours. By 6 o'clock, Maya's head was pounding, and her eyes burned from staring at screens. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. When are you coming home? I'm hungry and we're out of milk. Reality crashed back. She'd been so consumed with work that she'd forgotten about her actual life. The apartment that needed cleaning, the groceries that needed buying, the 14-year-old who depended on her for everything from food to emotional support. She texted back, leaving now. Pick up pizza on the way? His response was immediate. Yes, extra cheese. Maya gathered her things and headed for the elevator, exhausted in a way that felt different from retail exhaustion. This wasn't physical tiredness from standing for hours or mental fatigue from dealing with difficult customers. This was the bone-deep weariness of trying to become someone she'd never been, in a world that didn't quite believe she could. The elevator arrived. Not the one from yesterday, but still. Maya felt her chest tighten slightly when the doors closed. She forced herself to breathe steadily, counting floors down instead of watching them climb. When she reached the lobby, she found Ethan standing near the exit, phone to his ear, looking as exhausted as she felt. I understand, Richard, but it's not negotiable. No, I won't be there, because my daughter needs me more than the Tecton executives need my presence at a dinner. We'll reschedule. He ended the call and noticed Maya. Heading out? Miguel needs dinner, she gestured vaguely toward the street. And I need to remember I have a life outside this building. How was the afternoon with Sarah? Productive, overwhelming. We identified 15 clients for the pilot program. Maya shifted her bag on her shoulder. How's Sophie? Better. Mrs. Patterson said she spent most of the day reading and drawing. I'm picking her up in 20 minutes. He paused. I meant what I said earlier, about your help. If you're still willing. I am. Maya surprised herself with the certainty. Just tell me when and where. They walked out of the building together into the early evening chaos of the city. Commuters flooding sidewalks, taxis honking, the whole frantic energy of people trying to get home to lives that existed outside office walls. Tomorrow's going to be harder, Ethan said as they reached the street corner where their paths would diverge. The budget review meeting. You'll see exactly how resistant to change this company can be when money is involved. I'll survive. Maya tried to sound more confident than she felt. I've survived worse. I know you have. That's why I trust you. He headed toward the parking garage, and Maya caught the subway, squeezing into a packed car full of tired people who looked exactly how she felt. She picked up pizza, extra cheese, as requested, and made it home to find Miguel sprawled on their ratty couch doing homework with the TV playing in the background. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. Thanks, I feel terrible. Maya set down the pizza. But I survived day 2. They ate dinner on the couch, Miguel updating her on his day, the history test he'd aced, the girl in his English class who'd asked to borrow his notes, the college fair his guidance counselor wanted him to attend, even though college felt impossibly far away and expensive. We can afford it now, Maya said, the reality of her new salary still not quite real. College, the fees, all of it. Miguel looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You shouldn't have to sacrifice everything for me. I'm not sacrificing, I'm investing. She ruffled his hair in a gesture that would have annoyed him a year ago, but now he tolerated with good humor. You're going to do something amazing with your life, and I'm going to be able to say I helped make it possible. Later, after Miguel had gone to bed, Maya sat in their small living room with her laptop, reviewing notes from the day. She thought about Ethan's father, about the factory that had discarded him, about her own parents who'd died before they could see Miguel grow into the remarkable kid he was becoming, about all the people who'd been filtered out of systems designed for efficiency rather than humanity. This job, this impossible, overwhelming, terrifying job, was about more than just her survival. It was about making sure that other people, people like her father and Ethan's father, and everyone else who'd been made invisible, would be seen. If she could do that, the exhaustion would be worth it. If she failed, at least she'd have tried. Maya closed her laptop and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself or expose her limitations. But tonight, she'd survived, and sometimes survival was enough. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, client calls, late nights, and the constant feeling of being one mistake away from proving everyone's doubts justified. Maya threw herself into the pilot program with the kind of desperate determination that came from understanding exactly what was at stake. Not just her job, but the possibility that people like her might actually matter in systems designed to exclude them. She visited client sites with Sarah, sitting in manufacturing facilities and healthcare offices and technology startups, listening to executives describe frustrations they'd stopped bothering to report because no one seemed to care. She sat in on technical calls where engineers explained problems in language that made sense to other engineers, but left clients confused and alienated. She watched as the machinery of coal industries, efficient, reliable, impersonal, ground through interactions without ever quite connecting. And slowly, carefully, she began to help build something different. 3 weeks into the pilot program, Maya sat across from Ethan in his office at 7 in the evening, both of them too exhausted to go home, but too invested to stop working. Papers covered his desk, client reports, satisfaction surveys, preliminary retention data. Garrison Manufacturing renewed their contract, Ethan said, looking up from his laptop. 3-year extension, increased their service tier. Sarah said it was because of the supply chain consultation you facilitated. I didn't do anything except listen to what they were actually asking for and connect them with David's team, Maya said. That shouldn't be revolutionary. But it is, because for 2 years no one else bothered to listen. He pulled up more data. MedTech Solutions extended for 5 years, recommended us to 2 other healthcare companies. Dr. Chen personally called to tell me that working with us finally feels like a partnership instead of a transaction. Maya felt something warm settle in her chest. Not quite pride, but close. How many of the pilot clients have we retained? 13 out of 15 so far. The other 2 are still undecided, but their satisfaction scores have improved significantly. Ethan leaned back in his chair. The board meeting is Friday. I'm presenting these results as evidence that the model works, that investing in relationships generates measurable return. And if they don't agree, Maya had learned enough about corporate politics to know that good results didn't guarantee support. Then we keep doing it anyway and prove them wrong with more data. He said it with the kind of certainty that came from being someone who could override boards when necessary. But I think they'll agree. The numbers are too compelling to ignore. Maya's phone buzzed, a text from Miguel. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. What's wrong? Ethan noticed her expression change. Miguel's school called. He got into a fight. She was already gathering her things. I need to go. What happened? I don't know. The text just says I need to come in for a meeting tomorrow morning. Maya tried to calculate how she'd manage a school meeting and the 3 client calls she had scheduled. This is going to conflict with the Tecton presentation. The Tecton presentation can wait. Ethan stood. Family comes first. We've already rescheduled it twice anyway. Once more won't kill the deal. Maya looked at him, remembering that first morning when he'd canceled that same meeting to interview her. You're really going to postpone a billion-dollar merger again? I'm going to do what matters. The merger will happen when it happens. Miguel needs you now. He was already pulling out his phone. Let me call Richard. Tell him we're pushing to next week. Ethan, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep putting your business on hold for what? For people? That's exactly what I should be doing. He made the call, his voice firm and unapologetic. Richard, we're moving Tecton to next week. Something came up. No, not negotiable. They'll understand or they won't. Either way, we're rescheduling. He ended the call and looked at Maya. Go. Take care of your brother. We'll handle everything here. Maya left the office feeling split between gratitude and guilt. Grateful that Ethan understood, guilty that his support kept costing him opportunities. She caught the subway home, her mind racing through possibilities. Miguel didn't fight. He was quiet, studious, the kid who resolved conflicts with words rather than fists. Something serious must have happened. She found him sitting on their couch, ice pack pressed to his jaw, looking simultaneously defiant and ashamed. Let me see, Maya said, pulling his hand away from his face. His jaw was already bruising, purple spreading across his brown skin. What happened? Kid in my history class kept making comments about you. Miguel's voice was tight. About how you're only working at Coal Industries because you're sleeping with the boss. About how that's the only way people like us get ahead. Maya felt rage flash through her, hot and protective. So you hit him? So I told him to shut up. He didn't. So yeah, I hit him. Miguel met her eyes. I'm not sorry. You should be. Violence doesn't solve anything. Neither does ignoring it. He pulled away from her, pacing their small living room. You think I don't hear the things people say? About how we're charity cases, how you're probably not even qualified for that job, how it's suspicious that some random girl gets hired by a billionaire out of nowhere. What people say doesn't matter. It does when they say it to my face. Miguel's voice cracked. It matters when they look at everything you've sacrificed and reduce it to something dirty. Like you didn't earn it. Like you're not working 16-hour days trying to prove yourself. Maya sat down heavily, feeling the weight of recognition. She'd been so focused on proving herself at Coal Industries that she hadn't considered how her sudden change in circumstances looked from the outside. To people who didn't know the whole story, it probably did seem suspicious. A young woman with no credentials suddenly employed by a powerful CEO. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I should have talked to you about this. Prepared you for questions. I don't need preparation. I need people to stop being terrible. He slumped beside her on the couch. But I shouldn't have hit him. I know that. I just got so angry. They sat in silence for a moment, both of them bruised in different ways. Him physically, her by the realization that her choices affected more than just herself. The school wants to meet tomorrow morning, Maya said finally. They're probably going to suspend you. I know. Miguel winced as he adjusted the ice pack. I'm sorry. I know you have work stuff. Work stuff can wait. You're more important. That's what he said, isn't it, Mr. Cole, when you told him you had to leave? Miguel looked at her with an expression too old for 14. He's not like what I expected. From what people say. What do people say? that he's ruthless, that he only cares about money and power, that he destroys anyone who gets in his way. Miguel paused. But he keeps rescheduling meetings so you can take care of things. That doesn't seem ruthless. Maya thought about Ethan, the man from the elevator who'd admitted to failing his daughter, the CEO who'd canceled his biggest meeting to interview her, the father who'd left work early multiple times because Sophie needed him. None of those things fit the public image of a corporate titan. People are complicated, she said. The versions we show the world aren't always the versions we actually are. The next morning, Maya sat in the principal's office, listening to the boys' parents demand Miguel's expulsion while their son sat smugly in the corner. The principal, a tired woman in her 50s who'd probably mediated 1,000 of these meetings, looked exhausted by the whole situation. Mr. Santos threw the first punch, the other boy's father said. That's assault. He should be expelled and we should press charges. Your son spent 2 weeks making racist comments about my brother's sister, Miguel said, his voice shaking but defiant. That's harassment, but I don't see you talking about pressing charges for that. Boys will be boys, the mother said dismissively. If she's sensitive about her reputation, maybe she shouldn't put herself in questionable situations. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. This was it, the real judgment. Not about whether she was good at her job or whether she deserved the opportunity. Just the automatic assumption that a woman in her position must have gotten there through something other than merit. My sister works 16-hour days, Miguel said, standing up. She's supporting me while finishing a degree online that she had to pause when our parents died. She's smarter and works harder than anyone I know. And your son reduced all of that to a dirty joke because he can't imagine a woman succeeding without sleeping her way to the top. Miguel, the principal warned. No. Maya stood beside her brother. He's right. I don't care what your son said about me. I've dealt with worse. But teaching him that women only have value as sexual objects, that success is only legitimate for certain people, that's the real problem here. We're not here to discuss social issues, the boy's father said coldly. We're here because your brother assaulted our son. And we're willing to drop it, the mother added in a tone that suggested magnanimity, if Miguel is expelled. Otherwise, we'll pursue legal action. The principal looked at Maya with something like sympathy. I'm afraid given the circumstances, suspension is the minimum consequence. 3 days for Miguel. I'll also be speaking with the other student about his comments, but nothing will happen to him, Maya finished, because words aren't violence, even when they're designed to hurt. I'm sorry. I know this seems unfair. Maya took Miguel's hand, feeling him trembling with suppressed rage and shame. It's fine. We'll take the 3 days, but I want it noted that my brother was defending his family against harassment. That matters, even if it doesn't change the outcome. They left the school together, Miguel silent and withdrawn. Maya called Ethan from the parking lot, expecting to get voicemail but getting him directly. How did it go? He asked. 3-day suspension. The other kids' parents wanted expulsion or legal action, but the principal compromised. Maya watched Miguel get into their old car. He was defending me. From rumors about us. Silence on the line. Then, what kind of rumors? The kind you'd expect when a woman with no credentials suddenly gets hired by a male CEO. She said it flatly, too tired for euphemism. I knew there would be talk. I didn't think it would follow Miguel to school. I'm sorry. Ethan's voice carried genuine regret. I should have anticipated this. Should have been more careful about how we framed your hiring. There's no way to frame it that wouldn't generate suspicion. A powerful man helps a struggling woman. People fill in their own narrative. Maya got in the car, turning the key in an ignition that protested before catching. I knew what I was signing up for. I just didn't realize it would hurt Miguel. What can I do? Maya almost laughed. Unless you can change human nature and the assumptions people make, nothing. We just deal with it. Let me talk to the school. I can... No, she said it firmly. You getting involved will only make it worse. Will only confirm what people already think. Miguel and I will handle this ourselves. She ended the call before he could argue and drove Miguel home in silence. He stared out the window, jaw still bruised, eyes distant. I hate that you have to deal with this because of me. Maya said finally. It's not because of you. It's because people suck. Miguel turned to look at her. But I meant what I said. About you working harder than anyone. About deserving that job. I believe that, even if they don't. That night, after Miguel had gone to bed, Maya sat at their kitchen table with her laptop, staring at the presentation she was supposed to give at Friday's board meeting. Ethan had asked her to present the pilot program results, her analysis, her observations, her recommendations for scaling the model. It was an honor. It was an opportunity. It was also a setup for spectacular failure. Because no matter how good her results were, half the people in that room would be wondering if she'd earned her place through competence or through other means. Her lack of credentials would be scrutinized. Her relationship with Ethan would be questioned, and every success would be attributed to his support rather than her ability. Maya closed her laptop and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number she'd saved 3 weeks ago. Dr. Chen from MedTech Solutions. They'd spoken several times since that first meeting, building what Maya hoped was genuine professional respect. She typed out a text. Can I ask you something off the record? The response came 5 minutes later. Of course. Call me. Maya stepped onto their small balcony and dialed. Dr. Chen answered on the second ring. What's on your mind, Maya? How did you do it? The question came out more vulnerable than Maya intended. Build credibility in a world that assumes you don't belong? Deal with people who think you're only in the room because someone gave you a favor? Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. You're getting the talk. The whispers about how you got your position. My 14-year-old brother got in a fight defending me from it. I'm sorry, that's hard. Dr. Chen's voice carried the weight of experience. The honest answer is, you can't stop people from making assumptions. You can only control whether those assumptions eventually matter. How do I do that? By being so undeniably good at what you do that the assumptions become irrelevant. By building relationships based on competence rather than trying to defend yourself against accusations. Dr. Chen paused. When I started my company, people assumed a woman my age couldn't possibly understand technology. That I must have married money or slept my way into funding. You know what I did? What? I stopped caring what they assumed and started proving what I could deliver. I built something successful enough that the narrative changed from how did she get here to how did we miss her? Dr. Chen's voice softened. It took 5 years. It wasn't fair that I had to work twice as hard to get half the credit, but eventually the work spoke louder than the gossip. What if I'm not good enough? Maya asked. What if the doubters are right and I really am just here because Ethan took pity on me? Then you'll learn that and adjust accordingly. But from what I've seen, that's not what's happening. Dr. Chen's certainty was startling. The way you handled our account, the questions you asked, the solutions you facilitated, that wasn't pity. That was skill. Own it. After they hung up, Maya sat on the balcony for a long time, watching the city lights and thinking about the presentation on Friday. About the board members who would judge her, about the risk Ethan was taking by putting her in front of them. She could play it safe, present the data, stick to facts, minimize her own role. Or she could own her perspective, defend her approach, and trust that the results would speak for themselves. The question was whether she had the courage to bet on herself the way Ethan had. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Maya dressed carefully, not in expensive clothes she couldn't afford, but in the best version of what she had. Professional, clean, unapologetic. She caught the subway to Cole Industries, her presentation notes in a folder that was no longer cheap manila, but proper leather, a gift from Sarah who'd said every warrior needed proper armor. The board meeting was scheduled for 10. At 9:30, Maya stood outside the executive conference room, watching through the glass walls as board members arrived. Older men mostly. A few women, all of them carrying the kind of wealth and power that came from decades of being right about business. Nervous? Ethan appeared beside her, 2 coffee cups in hand. He offered her one. Terrified, she admitted. These people could end this whole experiment with 1 vote. They could, but they won't. He sipped his coffee. I've already sent them the data. They know the pilot program worked. What they're evaluating today is whether it's worth scaling. And whether I'm qualified to help lead it. Yes. He didn't soften it. Some of them will doubt you. Richard especially. He's been against this initiative from the start. but others will be curious. Patricia was impressed by your handling of the leadership meeting. Robert likes that you think in terms of business value rather than just process improvement. What do you need from me in there? Ethan turned to face her fully. The truth. The same honesty you gave me in the elevator. Don't try to sound like a consultant or use corporate language you don't believe in. Just tell them what you've seen, what you've learned, and why it matters. And if they don't buy it, then we fight harder. He smiled slightly. But I think they will. Because underneath all the skepticism and resistance, these are people who want the company to succeed, and you're offering them a path to that success. They entered the conference room together. 12 board members sat around the table, their attention immediately focusing on Maya with varying degrees of interest and suspicion. She recognized Richard, the man who'd been arguing with Ethan on phone calls, older, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in every room. Ethan made introductions, and Maya shook hands with people whose net worth collectively could probably buy a small country. She took her seat near the front, her presentation queued up on the screen, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Let's begin," said the board chair, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Stern. "Ethan, you've proposed significant changes to our client services model. The floor is yours." Ethan stood, and for the next 20 minutes he walked through the pilot program. The problems it addressed, the approach it implemented, the results it generated. 13 out of 15 clients retained. Satisfaction scores up an average of 32%. 3 clients upgrading their service tiers. 2 new clients signed through referrals. The data suggests that personalized, relationship-focused service delivery generates measurable ROI, Ethan concluded. What we're proposing is scaling this model across our entire client base, with tiered service levels that allow us to customize our approach while maintaining profitability. At what cost? Richard asked immediately. These results are based on a pilot with 15 clients and dedicated teams. Scaling to 200 clients means significant hiring, training, infrastructure investment. What's the break-even timeline? Robert has done the modeling, Ethan said. Robert? Robert Chen stood, pulling up financial projections. Based on current retention trends and the premium pricing model we're proposing for high-touch service, we'd break even in 18 months. After that, we project 12 to 15% increase in annual revenue from improved retention and expansion. Those are optimistic projections, Richard said. What happens if clients don't want to pay more for personalized service? Then we offer the choice and let them decide, Maya heard herself say. But right now, we're not even offering the choice. We're assuming clients want efficiency over relationship, and we're losing them because that assumption is wrong. Every eye turned to her. Margaret leaned forward slightly. You're Maya Santos, the new hire who's been leading this initiative. I've been helping implement it, yes. Maya forced herself to hold Margaret's gaze, though leading might be generous given that I've been here less than a month. A ripple of something, amusement maybe, or surprise at her honesty, went through the room. Walk us through your approach, Margaret said. What exactly did you do differently with these 15 clients? Maya stood, moving to the screen where her analysis waited. I started by listening. Actually listening, not just processing their requests through our service framework. And what I heard was that clients weren't frustrated with the quality of our work. They were frustrated with feeling invisible. She pulled up examples, email exchanges, support tickets, satisfaction survey comments. Look at this thread with Garrison Manufacturing. They filed 8 separate tickets about supply chain integration. Our technical team answered each ticket correctly, providing documentation and standard troubleshooting steps. But what Garrison actually needed was someone to understand their supply chain challenge and help them think through solutions. That's consulting, Richard said, not support. Exactly. Which is why we connected them with David Park's team for a consultation. It took 3 hours of collaborative problem solving, and it saved a 7-year client relationship that was about to walk. Maya moved to the next slide. The question isn't whether that was technically within our service scope. The question is whether losing a $100,000 contract is worth sticking to rigid service boundaries. She walked through more examples, showing the gap between what clients asked for and what they actually needed, showing how small investments in understanding, a phone call instead of an email, a consultation instead of documentation, a person instead of a process, had turned around relationships that were on the verge of ending. What you're describing is resource intensive, Patricia Liu said. She didn't sound critical, just analytical. How do you determine which clients deserve that level of attention? We don't think of it as deserving, Maya said. We think of it as risk assessment. Clients who are satisfied with standard service continue to receive it. Clients who show signs of dissatisfaction, declining scores, increased complaints, contract renewal hesitation, get escalated to high-touch teams. It's not about favoritism, it's about triage. And who makes those triage decisions? Richard pressed. Because what you're describing sounds like giving account managers broad discretionary authority. That's a recipe for inconsistency and inflated costs. Which is why we built decision frameworks, Sarah spoke up from her seat along the wall. She'd been invited to observe, not participate, but apparently couldn't stay silent. Clear criteria for escalation, defined boundaries for what high-touch teams can commit to, regular reviews to ensure consistency. May I? Maya gestured to the whiteboard at the side of the room. Margaret nodded. Maya grabbed a marker and started drawing, the same diagram she'd been refining for weeks, but clearer now, more confident. Current model. Clients interact with systems. Systems categorize and route. Responses are standardized and efficient, but impersonal. She drew boxes and arrows showing the flow. Proposed model. Clients interact with people who have authority to access whatever systems are needed. Responses are customized based on relationship knowledge and business understanding. She turned back to the board. The difference is that in the current model, the system is the intelligence. In the proposed model, the people are the intelligence. The system is just a tool they use to deliver solutions. That only works if you hire intelligent people and trust them to make good decisions, Richard said, which requires significant investment in recruitment and training. Yes, Maya agreed. But consider the alternative. Right now, we're hiring smart people and then constraining them with rigid processes that prevent them from using their intelligence. We're essentially paying for expertise and then telling that expertise to follow scripts. She moved to another section of the whiteboard. Sarah has been trying to improve client relationships for 2 years. She has the intelligence, the empathy, the business acumen, but the system won't let her use those skills because they don't fit into predefined service categories. That's not just inefficient, it's demoralizing. It's why our employee engagement scores have dropped alongside our client satisfaction scores. Margaret was taking notes now, her expression thoughtful. You're arguing that the current model fails both clients and employees. Well, I'm arguing that efficiency without flexibility creates systems that work perfectly right up until they don't, Maya said. And then when they fail catastrophically because there's no mechanism for adaptation. She pulled up one final slide, a quote from Dr. Chen's exit interview before they'd renewed. This is what MedTech Solutions said when we asked why they were considering leaving. We don't need a vendor who processes our requests efficiently. We need a partner who understands our mission and helps us succeed at it. Maya set down the marker and faced the board directly. That's what this initiative is about. Not abandoning efficiency, but recognizing that partnership requires more than efficient processing. It requires understanding, and understanding requires investment in relationships, not just systems. The silence that followed felt heavy with evaluation. Maya could see Richard's skepticism, Margaret's interest, Robert's analytical processing. These were people who'd spent careers making calculated decisions based on data and risk assessment. She'd just asked them to invest millions in what essentially came down to trusting that people mattered more than processes. Questions? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. I have one, Richard said, his gaze fixed on Maya. What makes you qualified to redesign our client services model? You have no business degree, no corporate experience, no track record of success in this domain. Why should we trust your judgment over the expertise of people who've been doing this for decades? The question was fair and brutal. Maya could have deflected, could have pointed to the results, could have hidden behind Ethan's authority. Instead, she told the truth. You shouldn't, she said simply. Trust my judgment, I mean. You should trust the data. You should trust that 13 out of 15 at-risk clients renewed because we changed our approach. You should trust that clients like Dr. Chen went from considering leaving to becoming advocates because someone finally listened to what they were actually saying. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. What I bring isn't expertise in corporate strategy or decades of business experience. What I bring is the perspective of someone who's been on the receiving end of systems that filter people out without seeing them. I've been rejected by algorithms. I've been invisible to processes. I've been told I don't matter because I don't fit predefined categories. Maya met Richard's eyes. So when I sit with clients who are frustrated because they feel invisible to our systems, I understand that frustration intimately. And that understanding lets me see solutions that people who've never been invisible might miss. Is that traditional qualification? No. Is it valuable? The results suggest it is. Bold answer, Margaret said, something like approval in her voice. Risky, but honest. Honesty is all I've got, Maya said. I can't pretend to be something I'm not. I can only offer what I actually am and let you decide if that's useful. The board members exchanged looks, some kind of silent communication happening that Maya couldn't interpret. Finally, Margaret spoke. We'll need to deliberate. Ethan, Maya, if you'll excuse us for 30 minutes. Maya gathered her materials with hands that trembled slightly. She'd laid everything out, her analysis, her perspective, her vulnerability. Now it was out of her control. In the hallway, Ethan leaned against the wall, looking simultaneously proud and anxious. That was remarkable. That was terrifying. Maya slumped against the opposite wall. Did I just talk myself out of a job? No. You talked yourself into credibility. He checked his watch. Richard will vote against it. He always resists change, but Margaret seemed genuinely interested, and she usually brings Patricia and Robert with her. If we get majority support, we move forward. And if we don't? Then we prove them wrong and come back with more data in 6 months. Ethan smiled slightly. But I think we're going to win this. They didn't have to wait the full 30 minutes. After 23 minutes that felt like hours, Margaret opened the conference room door. You can come back in. Maya followed Ethan back into the room, trying to read the board members' faces and finding them professionally neutral. They took their seats and waited. Margaret didn't drag it out. We voted to approve the scaled implementation of the relationship-based client services model with the tiered pricing structure Robert proposed. We'll do quarterly reviews to assess progress and adjust resource allocation as needed. Ethan, you'll have the budget authority to hire and structure the teams as you see fit. Maya felt relief crash through her, so intense it was almost painful. However, Margaret continued, and Maya's relief froze. We have concerns about organizational structure and reporting lines. Jennifer Park has been VP of Client Services for 12 years. This new model effectively splits that role. Relationship management under Sarah Lee, operations under Jennifer. We need clarity on how that division of responsibility will work. I've already discussed this with Jennifer, Ethan said. She'll focus on operational efficiency and standardized service delivery for clients who don't require high-touch support. Sarah will lead the relationship-focused teams. Both will report to me directly until we determine the optimal structure. And Ms. Santos? Richard asked, his skepticism still evident. What's her role in this new structure? Maya waited for Ethan to answer, but he looked at her instead, an invitation to define her own position. She took a breath. I see my role as organizational translation. Understanding what clients need, helping internal teams adapt to meet those needs, identifying gaps between what we're delivering and what creates actual value. I don't manage people or control resources. I facilitate understanding. That's consultant work, Richard said, not an employee function. Then maybe we're creating a new function, Maya said, one that didn't exist before because we didn't see the need for it. But the need is there. Someone has to bridge the gap between efficient systems and human relationships. I'm proposing to be that someone. Margaret made a note. I want quarterly reports on how this role develops. If it proves valuable, we codify it. If it doesn't, we adjust. She looked around the table. Anything else? No one spoke. The decision was made. Then we're adjourned, Margaret said. Congratulations, Ethan. Don't make us regret trusting your instincts. After the board members filed out, Maya sat in her chair feeling like she'd just run a marathon. They'd won. The initiative was approved. The model would scale. And she still had a job. Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at it, then at Maya. It's Sophie's school. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway and Maya could see his expression change through the glass wall. concern shifting to something softer. When he came back in, he was smiling. Sophie drew a picture of Mr. Hoppy for art class. The teacher wants to enter it in a district competition. He showed Maya his phone, a child's drawing, more refined than the one he'd shown her weeks ago, showing remarkable perspective for a 7-year-old. She wants me to come and see it. Then go, Maya said. I can handle the afternoon calls. Are you sure? I'm sure. Family first, remember? She smiled. Besides, I need to call Miguel and tell him his sister didn't get fired today. Ethan paused at the door. Thank you for everything you did in there, for being brave enough to be honest. Thank you for giving me the chance to be honest, Maya said. Not everyone would have. After he left, Maya sat alone in the conference room, looking at her presentation still on the screen. 3 weeks ago, she'd been nobody, just another filtered-out applicant, invisible to the systems designed to find talent. Today, she'd convinced a corporate board to invest millions in an approach built on her perspective. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be doubters, still be people who questioned whether she deserved to be there. The work would still be hard, the hours still long, the pressure still intense. But she'd proven something important. To the board, to herself, maybe to everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. That evening, Maya left the office at a reasonable hour for the first time in weeks. She picked up Miguel from home, and together they took the subway to Ethan's neighborhood, a part of the city Maya had only ever seen from bus windows, where brownstones cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Ethan had texted her his address after she'd offered to help with Sophie. Mrs. Patterson had a family emergency and needed the evening off. Ethan could work from home, but Sophie had been asking to meet the lady from the elevator. The story had apparently become something of a legend in the Cole household. Miguel looked around the tree-lined street with wide eyes. People really live like this? Some people, Maya said, checking the address. Not people like us. Maybe someday people like us, Miguel said. He'd been different since the school suspension, quieter, more thoughtful, but also more determined. Like watching his sister fight had taught him something about not accepting limitations. Ethan answered the door himself, looking more relaxed than Maya had ever seen him. Jeans instead of suits, barefoot, slightly disheveled in a way that made him seem more human. Come in, he said. Sophie's been watching for you out the window for the past hour. What? The brownstone's interior was beautiful, but lived in. Sophie's drawings on the refrigerator, toys in the living room, the comfortable chaos of a home rather than a showpiece. Sophie herself appeared from the kitchen, Mr. Hoppy clutched in one hand, looking shy and excited in equal measure. You're Maya, she said. I am, and this is my brother Miguel. Sophie studied Miguel with the serious evaluation children excel at. You got in trouble at school. I did, Miguel admitted. I made a mistake. I got in trouble too, for pushing someone. Sophie moved closer. My dad says sometimes we make mistakes when we're trying to protect people we love. Yeah, Miguel said softly. That's exactly right. Ethan ordered pizza, not fancy, just regular pizza from the place down the street. They ate in the kitchen while Sophie told them about her drawing, about school, about the rabbit she wanted to adopt, but her dad said they had to wait until summer. Why summer? Maya asked. Because he'll have more time then, Sophie said matter-of-factly. Right now he works too much, but he's getting better. Ethan looked simultaneously proud and embarrassed. I'm trying to get better. After dinner, Miguel helped Sophie with homework while Maya and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen. It was domestic and strange and comfortable all at once, washing dishes in a billionaire's kitchen while their siblings did math problems at the table. How's Miguel handling everything? Ethan asked quietly. He's resilient, like kids are. Maya dried a plate. But he shouldn't have to be. None of them should. No, they shouldn't. Ethan glanced toward the table where Sophie was explaining fractions to Miguel with patient determination. But we do the best we can to give them better than what we had. Is that what we're doing? Maya asked. At Cole Industries, with all these changes, trying to give people better than what we had? I think so. Or at least trying to build systems that don't automatically exclude people who don't fit conventional patterns. He set down the dish he was washing. My father would have liked you, would have appreciated that someone who understood what he went through was in a position to change things. I hope I can live up to that. You already are. Later, after Miguel and Maya said their goodbyes and headed home on the subway, Miguel was quiet for a long time before speaking. "They're not what I expected," he said finally. "Who?" "Rich people. Mr. Cole and Sophie. I thought they'd be different. More," he struggled for the word, "more distant. But they're just people dealing with the same stuff we deal with, trying to figure things out." "Everyone's just trying to figure things out," Maya said. "Money and power don't change that. They just change what resources you have while you're figuring. Do you think we'll ever have resources like that?" Maya thought about it honestly. "Probably not like that. But we'll have enough. We already do, actually. We have each other. We have possibilities we didn't have a month ago. That's not nothing." "No," Miguel agreed. "That's definitely not nothing." The following months blurred together in the best possible way. The client services model scaled gradually. Not the overnight transformation some had hoped for or feared, but steady, measurable improvement. Satisfaction scores climbed. Retention rates improved. New clients signed because of referrals from newly satisfied existing clients. Maya's role evolved organically. She became the person people called when systems failed to account for human complexity, when clients expressed needs that didn't fit service categories, when employees felt constrained by processes that prevented them from being effective. She didn't have a traditional title. Her business card just said Client Success Advocate, which was vague enough to mean everything or nothing. But people learned that when Maya got involved, things got solved. Not always how they'd expected, but in ways that addressed actual problems rather than just checking boxes. Jennifer never became a friend, but they reached a working détente. Jennifer excelled at building efficient systems for clients who needed reliability over relationship. Maya excelled at building relationships for clients who needed to feel seen. Together, they covered the full spectrum of client needs. Sarah became Maya's closest ally, the person who understood the vision and could translate it into operational reality. They worked late nights together, celebrated wins, commiserated over losses, built something that felt more like partnership than hierarchy. And Ethan gradually became something Maya hadn't expected. Not a boss exactly, though he technically was. Not quite a friend, though they'd shared too much for professional distance. Something in between, something undefined. A relationship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. He made it home for dinner most nights now. Attended Sophie's school events. Took Saturdays off to spend with his daughter. The Tecton merger eventually happened. 6 months later than originally planned, on slightly less favorable terms. But it happened. And somehow, the company didn't collapse from his reduced hours. If anything, it thrived. 6 months after that board meeting, Maya stood in front of the executive leadership team presenting quarterly results. Retention rate up 11%. Client lifetime value up 18%. Employee engagement scores climbing steadily. 3 industry awards for customer service excellence. The data suggests, she concluded, that investing in relationships generates measurable return, not just in revenue, but in reputation, referrals, and the kind of customer loyalty that can't be bought. "What's next?" Margaret Stern asked. She'd started attending leadership meetings quarterly, taking a more active interest in the company's evolution. "We're expanding the model internationally," Ethan said, "starting with our European clients, applying the same principles we've proven here. Maya will be spending next month in London helping establish the framework." After the meeting, Maya returned to her office. No longer the small space near Ethan's, but a proper office with her name on the door and windows overlooking the city. She had a team now, 3 people who reported to her, who looked to her for guidance despite her still minimal corporate experience. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Got into Columbia early decision, full scholarship." Maya stared at the message, reading it 3 times before it felt real. Columbia. Her brother, her brilliant, resilient, remarkable brother, was going to Columbia. She called him immediately. "Are you serious?" "Just got the email." His voice was shaking with excitement. "Full ride, room and board, everything." "Miguel, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you, without everything you sacrificed." "I didn't sacrifice. I invested." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, not sad ones, but the kind that came from overwhelming relief and joy. "And this is the return I was hoping for." That evening, she met Ethan near the elevator bank as they were both leaving. He noticed her expression immediately. "Good news or bad news?" he asked. "Best news. Miguel got into Columbia. Full scholarship." Ethan's face broke into a genuine smile. "That's remarkable. Congratulations." They stepped into the elevator together, the same one that had trapped them 8 months ago. It had been repaired within days of the malfunction, deemed safe and functional. But Maya still felt a flutter of residual anxiety every time the doors closed. "You know what I realized?" Ethan said as they descended. "If this elevator hadn't broken that morning, none of this would have happened. I would have gone to my office, prepared for Tecton, continued building an efficient machine that didn't actually matter to anyone. And I would have interviewed with HR, probably wouldn't have gotten the job, and would still be working retail wondering when things would get better," Maya said. "Do you ever think about that?" Ethan asked. "How much our lives changed because of a mechanical failure?" "Sometimes. But I don't think it was the elevator that changed things. I think it was the conversation we had while we were stuck. The honesty. The willingness to admit that success and struggle aren't as different as they look from the outside." The elevator reached the ground floor and the doors opened. They walked through the lobby together, past the security guard who now knew both their names, out into the evening air. "I'm having dinner with Sophie tonight," Ethan said. "Just us. She wants to make pasta from scratch. Do you and Miguel want to join us?" Maya thought about how strange and wonderful it was that a billionaire CEO was inviting her family to his home for dinner, about how the boundaries between their lives had blurred into something that defied easy categorization. "We'd love to," she said. They parted ways at the corner, Ethan heading toward the parking garage, Maya toward the subway. She rode home through the evening rush, surrounded by tired people heading back to lives that existed beyond office walls. She thought about how she used to be one of them, invisible in the crowd, just another person trying to survive another day. She wasn't invisible anymore. But more importantly, she'd learned that invisibility wasn't a personal failing. It was a systems failure. And systems could be changed by people brave enough to question whether efficiency was worth the cost of humanity. Miguel was waiting when she got home, acceptance letter pulled up on his laptop, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Which, in a way, he had. "We need to celebrate," Maya said. "Pizza?" Miguel suggested. "No, tonight we do better than pizza." She pulled out her phone and made a reservation at a restaurant she'd always walked past but never entered, the kind of place where entrees cost what she used to make in a day. "Tonight we celebrate properly." At dinner, Maya raised her glass of water, because even with her new salary, some habits died hard. To Columbia, to new beginnings, to proving that the systems that tried to filter us out were wrong. Miguel clinked his glass against hers. "To you, for never giving up, for showing me what fighting for something looks like." Later, when the bill came and Maya paid it without wincing, without calculating whether it would affect rent or groceries or Miguel's school fees, she felt something shift inside her. Not forgetting where she'd come from, but finally believing that where she was going might actually be achievable. 2 months later, Maya stood in Ethan's office reviewing international expansion plans when Miranda knocked urgently on the door. "Mr. Cole, there's someone here to see you. She says it's important." Ethan frowned. "I don't have any appointments scheduled." "She says she's your ex-wife." The air in the room changed instantly. Maya saw Ethan's expression go carefully neutral, the kind of blank professional face he wore when dealing with hostile board members. "I'll give you privacy," Maya said, gathering her materials. "No, stay." Ethan's voice was firm. "This won't take long." The woman who entered was beautiful in the way magazine covers were beautiful. Polished, perfect, expensively maintained. She looked at Ethan with an expression Maya couldn't quite read, then at Maya with obvious assessment. "Rachel," Ethan said, "what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you, to see Sophie." Rachel's voice carried practiced warmth. "I've been doing some thinking, and I realized I made a mistake. Walking away from my family. From us." "There is no us," Ethan said. "There hasn't been for 18 months. There could be." Rachel moved closer. "I know I hurt you, hurt Sophie, but I'm different now. I've worked on myself, understood what I was running from, and I want to come home." Maya felt acutely uncomfortable, like she was witnessing something private and painful. But Ethan's request that she stay kept her rooted in place. Sophie doesn't need you coming back into her life and leaving again when things get difficult, Ethan said, his voice controlled but edged with anger. She's finally stable, finally sleeping through the night without nightmares. I'm not letting you undo that progress. I'm her mother. You're a woman who gave birth to her. Being a mother requires showing up, and you haven't shown up when it mattered. Ethan gestured toward the door. I'm sorry you're struggling, Rachel, genuinely, but we've moved on. You should too. Rachel's perfect composure cracked slightly. Because of her? She looked at Maya. Because you replaced me with some assistant young enough to be… Stop, Ethan's voice cut like a blade. Maya has nothing to do with this except being a friend to Sophie and a valuable colleague to me. The end of our marriage was about choices you made, not people I hired. A friend? Rachel said skeptically. Is that what we're calling it? That's what it is. And even if it weren't, it wouldn't change the fact that you don't get to walk away from your family and then expect to walk back in when it's convenient. Rachel looked between them, seeing something that made her expression harden. Fine, but I have legal rights. I want to see my daughter. Then have your lawyer contact mine and we'll arrange supervised visitation. Ethan moved to the door, opening it. But showing up here unannounced and making demands isn't how this works. After Rachel left, Ethan slumped into his chair, looking more exhausted than Maya had seen him since that first day in the elevator. I'm sorry you had to witness that, he said. Don't be. Are you okay? I don't know. He rubbed his face. Part of me wants to give Sophie a chance to have her mother back. Part of me knows Rachel will disappear again the moment parenting gets inconvenient, and I don't know which impulse to trust. Trust the one that protects Sophie, Maya said. Everything else is secondary. That night, Maya got home to find Miguel looking serious. We need to talk, he said. Maya's heart sank. Those 4 words never preceded good news. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but I need to tell you something. Miguel sat on the couch, gesturing for her to join him. People at school have been talking about you and Mr. Cole. Miguel, let me finish. He took a breath. They're saying you're together, that you're dating or whatever, and I know it's not true because I've seen how you two are around each other. It's not like that, but what? But maybe it should be. Miguel said it quietly. Like, he's good to you, he respects you, he shows up for the people he cares about, and you light up differently when you talk about work, about ideas you've been discussing with him. That's not nothing. Miguel, it's complicated. There's a power dynamic, professional boundaries, 1,000 reasons why you're talking yourself out of something that might actually make you happy. Miguel looked at her with eyes that were too old for his age. You spent 3 years sacrificing everything for me. Maybe it's time to let yourself have something for you. Maya thought about it, really thought about it, about Ethan, about the partnership they'd built, about how the lines between professional and personal had blurred into something neither of them had names for. I don't know if he feels that way, she said finally. Maybe you should find out. The next day, Maya went to Ethan's office intending to have a conversation about boundaries, about keeping things professional, about not letting gossip affect their working relationship. Instead, she found him standing at his window, shoulders tense, staring at the city below. Rachel filed for partial custody, he said without turning around. Her lawyer sent papers this morning. I'm sorry. She's going to try to argue that I'm an unfit parent, that I work too much, that Sophie needs her mother, that my relationship with a young employee demonstrates poor judgment. He turned to face her. She's going to use you to try to take my daughter. Maya felt cold settle in her chest. Then maybe I should resign, remove the complication. No, Ethan crossed to her. You shouldn't have to leave because my ex-wife is weaponizing our professional relationship. That's exactly the kind of system failure we've been fighting against, punishing people for not fitting conventional patterns. Ethan, if this costs you Sophie, it won't, because we'll fight it honestly. We'll show that our relationship, whatever it is, has been professional and appropriate. That you've been a positive influence in Sophie's life, not a negative one. That the only person making poor choices here is Rachel. Whatever it is, Maya repeated his words. Do you know what it is? He was quiet for a moment. I know it started as a professional relationship. I know it evolved into something that matters more than it probably should. I know that I trust your judgment more than anyone else's, that I look forward to our conversations more than any meeting, that Sophie asks about you constantly and lights up when you're around. That's not an answer, because I don't have one. I just know that I don't want to lose it, whatever it is, because people want to make it into something scandalous. He moved closer. What do you want it to be? Maya thought about Miguel's words, about her brother telling her to stop talking herself out of happiness, about Dr. Chen's advice to stop caring about assumptions and start proving what she could deliver, about 3 years of sacrifice and struggle, and finally, having something good in reach. I want it to be honest, she said, whatever that looks like. No pretending it's only professional when it's more. No pretending it's more when we're not ready for that. Just honest. I can do honest. Ethan smiled, tentative and real. Though I should warn you, honest means admitting that I started falling for you somewhere between the elevator breaking and you defending your brother's fighting. And that terrifies me almost as much as Rachel's custody filing. Why does it terrify you? Because the last time I let someone in, she left. And if you left, if this didn't work, I'm not her, Maya interrupted. I don't run when things get hard. I've proven that. And you're not who you were 18 months ago. We're both different now. Better, maybe. They stood in his office, the city sprawling below them, two people who'd been broken by different circumstances trying to figure out if broken pieces could fit together into something whole. So what do? Ethan asked. We stay honest. We protect Sophie. We let this be whatever it becomes without forcing it into someone else's definition. Maya took his hand, the gesture simple and monumental at once. And we stop letting fear make our decisions. The custody battle lasted 4 months. Rachel's lawyers tried every angle, Ethan's work hours, his canceled meetings, his relationship with Maya. They painted a picture of a CEO too consumed with business and inappropriate relationships to properly parent. Ethan's lawyers fought back with documentation of every school event attended, every dinner shared, every drawing Sophie had made that showed a happy child with a present, engaged father. They brought in Mrs. Patterson to testify about Ethan's dedication, Sophie's therapist to confirm she was thriving, and when Rachel's lawyers tried to use Maya as evidence of poor judgment, they brought in Maya herself. She sat in a conference room across from lawyers who wanted to paint her as a homewrecker, as an opportunist, as everything ugly that people assumed about women who succeeded through unconventional paths. Ms. Wattel, Santos, Rachel's lead attorney began, how would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Cole? Professional, Maya said. Collaborative, based on mutual respect and shared goals. And you expect us to believe there's nothing personal about a relationship where the CEO personally hired you, elevated you beyond your qualifications, and spends significant time with you outside office hours? I expect you to believe what's true. Ethan hired me because he saw potential that traditional hiring systems had missed. He elevated me because I delivered results. And we spend time together outside work because we've become friends who support each other's families. Maya met the lawyer's eyes. If a male employee received mentorship and professional support from a female CEO, would you question it this intensely, or are you only skeptical because conventional narratives say women can't earn opportunities through competence? We're questioning judgment. You're questioning whether I slept my way to success because you can't imagine a woman like me succeeding any other way. Maya's voice was level but firm. But the reality is, I'm good at my job. I've generated measurable value for Cole Industries. And my relationship with Ethan, professional or otherwise, has made both of us better at supporting the people who depend on us, including Sophie. You've met Mr. Cole's daughter? Multiple times. She's a remarkable kid dealing with abandonment trauma from her mother's departure. I've tried to be a positive presence in her life because that's what decent people do when they see a child struggling. So you see yourself as a mother figure? I see myself as a friend, an adult who shows up and cares, which is apparently more than Sophie's actual mother has managed. Rachel's lawyer tried several more approaches, but Maya didn't give ground. She told the truth plainly and refused to be ashamed of it. In the end, the judge awarded Ethan primary custody with Rachel receiving supervised visitation 2 weekends a month. The ruling noted that Rachel had voluntarily abandoned her parental responsibilities and had failed to demonstrate genuine commitment to Sophie's well-being. The day the ruling came through, Ethan called Maya from his lawyer's office. We won, he said, his voice thick with relief. Full custody. She can see Sophie, but supervised, and only if Sophie wants to. How are you feeling? Like I can finally breathe? Like maybe things are actually going to be okay? That evening, they celebrated at Ethan's house. Just Ethan, Sophie, Maya, and Miguel. Sophie had drawn a picture of the four of them, rough and childlike, but somehow capturing something real about how they'd become this strange, assembled family. We're not a normal family, Sophie observed, studying her drawing. But I like us anyway. Normal is overrated, Miguel said. Weird families are way more interesting. Months continued to pass, blurring into a life that Maya sometimes had to remind herself was real. Coal Industries kept growing, kept improving, kept proving that investing in people generated returns that pure efficiency never could. Maya's role expanded to include speaking at conferences, publishing articles about relationship-based client services, being interviewed by business magazines about innovation in corporate culture. The whispers about how she got her position never completely stopped, but they mattered less as the results spoke louder, as clients specifically requested her involvement, as other companies tried to recruit her away with offers that Ethan kept matching. She and Ethan never defined exactly what their relationship was. It was professional partnership and personal friendship, and something more complex than either label captured. They were careful around the office, conscious of perception. But outside work, they built something real. Dinners with Sophie and Miguel, weekend trips, conversations that went deeper than business strategy. Is this working? Ethan asked one night after the kids had gone to bed. They were sitting on his couch, the city lights visible through his windows, comfortable in a way that came from months of showing up for each other. Define working, Maya said. Define what we're doing. He smiled slightly. We've been deliberately vague for almost a year. Maybe it's time to figure out what this actually is. Maya thought about it. I think it's two people who are broken in different ways learning that broken doesn't mean worthless. That failure and struggle can become the foundation for something better, that the systems designed to filter us out were wrong about what matters. That's very poetic, but it doesn't answer the question. Because I don't think we need a label. We're partners, friends, people building something together, at work, at home, in life. Does it need to be more specific than that? No, Ethan said. I guess it doesn't. 2 years after that first elevator breakdown, Maya stood in the same conference room where she'd presented to the board. But this time the meeting was different. This time she was presenting her resignation. I've accepted a position with MedTech Solutions, she told the leadership team. Dr. Chen has asked me to help build their client services division. It's an opportunity to implement everything we've learned here from the ground up. The silence that followed was profound. Jennifer looked shocked. Sarah looked devastated. Robert looked like he was already calculating the cost of losing her. Ethan, sitting at the head of the table, looked proud. We'll miss you, he said simply, but we're grateful for everything you've built here and excited to see what you build next. After the meeting, Sarah pulled Maya aside. I thought you'd stay. I thought you and Ethan and I are fine. This isn't about leaving him. It's about not staying somewhere because of him. Maya smiled. Dr. Chen is giving me a chance to lead, not just advise, to build systems from scratch instead of fixing broken ones. That's too good to pass up. Will you stay in touch? Of course. You're not getting rid of me that easily. On Maya's last day at Coal Industries, there was a small gathering in the executive conference room. People from across the company showed up to say goodbye. Account managers she'd trained, clients she'd worked with, executives she'd challenged and occasionally convinced. Ethan gave a short speech about how one broken elevator had changed the company's direction. How Maya's perspective had taught them that efficiency without humanity was just sophisticated failure. How she'd proven that unconventional paths to success were often the most valuable. I hired Maya because I saw potential, Ethan said, but she exceeded every expectation I had. She didn't just improve our client services. She changed how we think about people, all people. The ones we serve and the ones we employ. That legacy will last long after she's gone. Maya stood to say goodbye, looking around at faces that had been skeptical, then accepting, then supportive. When I started here, I thought success meant proving I belonged. But what I learned is that belonging isn't something you prove. It's something you build together, and you all helped me build it. Thank you." She handed in her badge, packed up her office, walked through the lobby one last time as an employee of Cole Industries. Miguel was waiting outside, now a confident college sophomore majoring in political science with plans for law school. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Terrifying." "Exciting, right." Maya looked back at the building. "I built something there, proved something. Now I get to do it again somewhere else. And Mr. Cole is happy for me, proud, and still very much in my life, just not my boss anymore." She smiled, which actually makes things less complicated. That evening, Maya had dinner at Ethan's house one more time as a Cole Industries employee. Tomorrow, she'd be Dr. Chen's VP of Client Experience at MedTech Solutions. But tonight, she was just Maya, sitting around the table with Ethan, Sophie, and Miguel, eating takeout and talking about nothing important. "Are you sad she's leaving?" Sophie asked her father when Maya and Miguel were getting ready to go. "A little," Ethan admitted, "but mostly I'm proud. She's going to do amazing things." "Will she still come over for dinner?" "I hope so." He looked at Maya. "Will you?" "Try keeping me away," Maya said. "You're stuck with me now, just in a different capacity." Outside, saying goodbye on the street corner where they'd parted ways dozens of times before, Ethan took Maya's hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being stuck in an elevator with me. For being honest when I needed honesty. For showing me that the machine I built wasn't worth running if it couldn't see people." He paused. "For becoming someone I can't imagine my life without." "Thank you for holding the elevator door," Maya said. "For creating a job that shouldn't have existed. For trusting me before I'd proven I deserved it. For being willing to change. Think we'll look back on this as the biggest mistake we ever made? You leaving?" "No," Maya said with certainty. "I think we'll look back on it as the moment we both proved we were strong enough to choose growth over comfort. That's not a mistake. That's evolution." They stood there for a moment longer, two people whose lives had collided through mechanical failure and diverged through intentional choice. The elevator that had trapped them had long since been repaired, returned to efficient service. But what they'd built during those trapped minutes, honesty, partnership, the courage to challenge broken systems, that couldn't be fixed because it had never been broken. It had been exactly what they needed. Maya walked away from Cole Industries building for the last time as an employee, Miguel beside her, the city lights beginning to glow in the early evening. She thought about that first morning, scared and desperate, hoping for an entry-level job that would solve her immediate problems. She'd gotten so much more than that, not because of luck or charity or inappropriate relationships, but because someone had been willing to see past systems to the person those systems missed. And she'd been brave enough to prove that seeing her hadn't been a mistake. Behind her, Ethan watched her go, Sophie's hand in his, feeling the bittersweet mix of loss and pride. He'd built an empire on efficiency and control, but the most valuable thing he'd ever built was learning how to let go. The elevator in the lobby hummed smoothly, carrying people up and down, functioning exactly as designed. No more breakdowns, no more malfunctions. But every time Ethan wrote it, he remembered. And every time Maya visited, which she did weekly, for dinners and planning sessions, and the slow building of something that had no name but felt like home, she remembered too, that sometimes the best moments in life came from things breaking down, from being forced to stop, to sit with discomfort, to see another person without the filters and facades, from choosing, even when choosing was terrifying, to be honest. The story that began with two strangers trapped between floors didn't end with happy ever after simplicity. It ended with complexity, with growth, with people building lives that honored both who they'd been and who they were becoming. Maya Santos went on to revolutionize client services at 3 more companies, eventually starting her own consulting firm that helped organizations see the people their systems made invisible. She spoke at conferences, wrote books, became the kind of success story that inspired others who'd been filtered out to keep fighting. Ethan Cole ran his company with principles that prioritize people over processes, relationship over efficiency. Cole Industries never became the biggest firm in their sector, but they became the most respected, the one where people wanted to work, the one clients trusted. Sophie grew up knowing that families came in all shapes, that love wasn't about biology or convention, but about showing up. She had her father, who never missed another important moment. She had Maya, who taught her that being underestimated was just an opportunity to surprise people. She had Miguel, who showed her that brilliance didn't require pedigree. And Miguel became the lawyer he'd always been meant to be, advocating for people trapped by systems designed without them in mind, fighting the same fights his sister had fought, but with different tools. Years later, when people asked Maya about her success, how she went from retail to executive to entrepreneur, she didn't tell them about hard work or intelligence or persistence, though all of those mattered. She told them about an elevator that broke at exactly the right moment, about a conversation that changed two lives, about learning that the most valuable opportunities often came disguised as inconvenience, and about choosing every single day to be brave enough to see past the systems to the people they were designed to serve. The elevator still stood in Coal Industries Tower, still carried thousands of people every day. None of them knew its history. None of them understood that it had been, for 43 minutes on one ordinary morning, the space where something extraordinary began. But Maya knew, and Ethan knew. And sometimes when the world felt overwhelming, when the work seemed impossible, when doubt crept in, they'd remember. That pause between floors, between lives, between who they were and who they'd become. That unexpected moment when everything stopped, and everything finally began.